Chapter 729. The Empress put down Shen Miao's hand and said, Ben Gong came here today to talk to you. She sighed. That day I had mentioned to your mother that you are not engaged and your age is just right. Ben Gong looks like you and wants to be a matchmaker. Naturally Ben Gong will not force others and one must like to be a matchmaker. Shen Miao lowered her head and did not speak. The Empress patted her hand. Do you think Ben Gong is living well? Is it glorious or not? Shen Miao sneered in her heart, but on the surface she replied with a smile, Your ladyship is living well and very glorious. Marrying into the imperial family and being pampered and protected by powerful people, every female would be able to live well and glorious. Ben Gong's luck is good. Now that you also have such good luck, do you want to live well and glorious? These words were almost tempting. Shen Miao's lips slightly raised, but her words were humble and fearful. She suddenly knelt down on the ground and said, This official's daughter is currently living very well and do not dare to be compared to others and do not dare to be compared to your ladyship. Plead your ladyship to spare this official's daughter's life. The Empress was stunned. She did not expect that Shen Miao would have such a reaction. There were not a few people who wanted to climb up to be a phoenix, and the Empress knew that as long as it was a female, they would have some vanity in their hearts. She used herself as an example to tempt. Shen Miao was young and easy to be persuaded, so she was afraid that she would not be tempted. As long as Shen Miao slightly relaxed her mouth and followed her words, then the imperial family would be able to rightfully push the initiative to the Shen family for the bestowal of marriage. Even if one wanted to be a robber, one would have to cover it up a little. Who knew that Shen Miao would have such a reaction? There was no temptation, no hesitation, and instead fear. The Empress thought in her heart unhappily, could it be that it was so scary to be an empress? Or was it that this young lady of the Shen family was actually as timid as a mouse and as stupid as a cow? She did not understand her hints and thought that a disaster was imminent. Really mud that could not hold up the wall. In the following period of time, no matter how the Empress spoke tactfully, harshly, or gently, Shen Miao always had a humble and fearful look. And it was precisely this look that made her mouth very tight and not a single word could be pried out. At the end, the Empress was somewhat angry and asked Shen Miao to return, thinking that this matter would not work from Shen Miao's end and one had to discuss a new method with Emperor Wen Hui. Because when the Empress let Shen Miao leave, she was very dissatisfied with Shen Miao's attitude. Even the palace maids of Kuan Ning Palace did not care much about Shen Miao and handed Shen Miao over to a passing little eunuch to send Shen Miao out of the palace. The young eunuch naturally agreed. The little eunuch brought Shen Miao out of the palace, and after a few turns, there were many palaces in the depths of the palace. Other than some side halls where the concubines lived, there were even more small rooms where the eunuchs and palace maids lived. This little eunuch brought Shen Miao to a secluded place, and after bypassing a garden, almost facing an abandoned garden, Shen Miao stopped and said, This is not the direction to leave the palace. Where do you want to bring me to? Her hand quietly pressed on the bracelet in her sleeves. No one was more familiar with Ming Qi's palace than her, so she knew which direction was the most advantageous to escape from. That little eunuch was surprised for a moment before whispering, Gentleman Pei wants to see young lady. Pei Lang? Shen Miao slightly frowned. After thinking for a moment, Shen Miao still followed the little eunuch forward. Pei Lang had not communicated with her for a long time, and Shen Miao thought that Fu Xiaoyi had discovered some clues about Pei Lang. But when she sent Mo Qing over to inquire, he seemed to have seen Pei Lang in the residence of Prince Ding, and it seemed that he was safe and sound. If Fu Xiaoyi suspected Pei Lang, he would definitely not let Pei Lang be so free and easy. Chapter 730. If Pei Lang was looking for her, it must be something very important. There were many coincidences in the world. What Shen Miao did not know was that the imperial family had the intention to arrange a marriage for her and implicated everyone. Even though Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu were relatives and ran around without stopping, some other people also rushed in wave after wave. For example, Luo Ling was able to express his sincerity, Su Mingfeng's marriage proposal by a freak combination of factors and Feng Zixian lending a helping hand. There were thousands of connections in the world, and those connections were like the crystal thread spat out by spiders. They were arranged in their respective positions, and one day, they crisscrossed and formed a fine and dense net, forming the most astonishing and unbelievable coincidence in the world. Princess Rong Xian entered the palace. Her health was not very good, and she had become thinner and thinner in recent years. Throughout the year, the number of days he would enter the palace could be counted, but today he seemed to be in a hurry. The palace maid wanted to inform, but Princess Rong Xian waved her hands and said, Ben Gong did not bring an invitation and have important matters to discuss with Imperial older brother. There is no need to inform. How would the guards at the palace doors dare to stop them? Even though Princess Rong Xian did not show her face much nowadays, she was after all the daughter that the late emperor doted on and had a strong temperament. If he were to anger her, there would be consequences for him in the future, so he immediately let her go. The palace maid wanted to find a sedan chair for Princess Rong Xian but was rejected by Princess Rong Xian. Princess Rong Xian said, it would be inconvenient to use a sedan chair if walking on a small path. You guys support me, I'll walk slowly. Princess Rong Xian's heart was also anxious. She did not ask about the matters of the court and stayed in her own princess residence every day. If it was not that she heard the servants talking about Shen Miao's matter when she passed by the courtyard, she would not know that the imperial family had the intention to marry Shen Miao to the crown prince. Not to mention Xie Jingxing, Princess Rong Xian also wanted to protect Shen Miao. Princess Rong Xian herself also admired Shen Miao very much. As a member of the imperial family, Princess Rong Xian knew that when a female married in, it would look grand on the surface but it might not be true happiness. Moreover, Shen Miao was not a woman who was obsessed with wealth and glory, so it was even more unnecessary for her. If she really married into the Eastern Palace, Shen Miao would not be happy for the rest of her life. Princess Rong Xian rushed to look for Emperor Wen Hui, hoping to change her imperial brother's mind. Thus, he took a shortcut and walked on a small path. Shen Miao arrived at a remote pavilion. The pavilion was hidden in the forest, with its back facing a long corridor. There were a few houses along the corridor, making it convenient to hide. Pei Lang walked out of the house. The little eunuch stood guard outside for them. Shen Miao nodded her head to Pei Lang as a form of greeting before asking, "What urgent matter does gentleman Pei have to discuss here?" "Prince Ding had sealed the residence and there is no way to send you a message." Pei Lang said, "The idea of the crown prince marrying you into the family was suggested by Prince Ding." Shen Miao raised her eyebrows. Pei Lang saw that she was not surprised and asked, "You know about it?" "Guessed that it was his doing." Shen Miao lightly said, "With the crown prince's brain, why would he think of me for no reason?" Pei Lang was somewhat puzzled as Shen Miao's tone of voice seemed to be very familiar with the crown prince and Fu Xiu-yi. But Shen Miao was an unmarried daughter and did not have the opportunity to interact with the princes, so how would she understand the personalities of the princes? One fear that Shen Xian was not as familiar as Shen Miao. This deserted garden had once been haunted by ghosts, so no one usually came here. Thus Pei Lang was not worried that someone would pass by. He frowned. "About the marriage, what do you plan to do?" Shen Miao was somewhat surprised. Pei Lang had always been a person who would only analyze the pros and cons and would not bring in personal feelings, thus it was rare for him to ask about her marriage. After all, how she saw this marriage was insignificant to the overall situation. Chapter 731. Shen Miao said, "Let nature take its course. You cannot marry the crown prince." Pei Lang said, "It is not important to marry or not." What Shen Miao hated the most was Pei Lang's determined look, as if he had grasped everything in his hands, thus he could not see the struggles of others and would only do what he thought was right. She coldly said, "Even if I marry over, I might not live well and would use my own methods to achieve my own goal. The road is walked by oneself and every road has a different way to walk. Gentleman Pei would not think that there is only one road in this world, right?" I do not mean what you think. Pei Lang sighed. Marrying into the Eastern Palace would allow you to walk your own path. But to use your marriage as the price, this is too cruel to you, and the gains do not make up for the losses. Shen Miao's heart moved slightly as she looked at Pei Lang. Pei Lang actually said, to use your marriage as the price, this is too cruel to you. One had to know that in the previous lifetime when Wan Yu was going to marry the Xiongnu, Shen Miao once begged Pei Lang because Pei Lang was Fu Xiuyi's confidant and Fu Xiuyi would always consider Pei Lang's words. At that time Pei Lang told Shen Miao, Your ladyship, using the princess's marriage to exchange for the safety of Ming Qi and the welfare of the people, is it not a good thing? Pei Lang, who was good at observing the world's overall situation, would actually put the overall situation in second place. Pei Lang did not notice Shen Miao's expression and said, The imperial family will spread the news and no one in the entire Ding capital would dare to marry into the Shen residence. Shen Miao said, So what about that? If it is not possible, you marry me. Pei Lang said. The air seemed to have become extremely stiff in a moment, but out of Pei Lang's expectations, Shen Miao's gaze that stared at him did not have any surprise or shyness. There was not even the slightest trace of being moved. Looking at it seriously, it seemed to be somewhat cold. She asked, What are you talking about? Pei Lang's heart seemed to be poured with a basin of cold water, making it strangely cold. It was obvious that he was only judging the pros and cons of the matter, but under Shen Miao's clear eyes, it seemed that some of his hidden wishes were seen by others. In a moment, he became embarrassed. Pei Lang avoided Shen Miao's gaze and calmed himself down before continuing, Since you cannot marry into the Eastern Palace, you have to marry someone else so that you can have a way out. If you marry me, you might be able to resist for a while. Why is Mr. Pei helping me? Shen Miao softly opened her mouth and there seemed to be some other tone in her words which made it hard for one to understand. She said, We only have a transaction relationship because of Lu Ying, or rather a master and servant relationship. I am the master, you are the servant. From the beginning to the end, I was the one who threatened you. If I was imprisoned, wouldn't that be exactly what you wanted? Following Fu Xiuyi is 1,000 or 10,000 times better than following me. Gentleman Pei helps me so much that if one did not know, one would think that you are sincere. There was a hint of mockery in her words, and Pei Lang felt uncomfortable when he heard it. He did not know why Shen Miao was sometimes polite to him and sometimes seemed to be hostile to him. Perhaps women were fickle like this? But he did not know the answer to Shen Miao's question. Because he didn't know why he did it. Shen Miao smiled gently, Even if I marry Gentleman Pei, it would be the last resort. What kind of identity does Gentleman Pei use to marry me? How would one explain to Prince Ding? You will not expose your identity because of me. Gentleman Pei is a good chess piece and I do not want to use it so casually. Moreover, she slightly raised her chin, marriage and a husband to me are not as important as you all think. It is only a person sharing the same bed, eating together and sleeping together. Other than these, there is no difference from strangers. I do not care who to marry. I also do not care if one would be forced to marry. My happiness or happiness will not depend on this. Chapter 732. Pei Lang kept on shaking his head when he heard it. He wanted to deny Shen Miao's words as he felt that Shen Miao was still young and did not know how important a lifelong event was to a female. At this moment she was only acting in a fit of pique, and in the future when she understood the reason and suffered, she would then regret it. However, when he looked up and saw Shen Miao's expression, he could not say a word. Shen Miao's expression was serious. She was cold and indifferent and had a faint weariness towards the matters of the outside world, as if she would subconsciously feel disgusted at the mention of it. She really did not care. But how would a female not care about the person that accompanied her for life? Pei Lang looked at Shen Miao blankly. When the atmosphere was in a deadlock, one heard a malicious ridicule coming from behind, did not think that there was such an affair. Shen Miao suddenly turned back and saw that one did not know when two masked black-clad people appeared behind her. These two people were carrying long swords in their hands as they pounced toward Shen Miao. Pei Lang quickly pulled Shen Miao to dodge and Shen Miao shouted, "Who are you? Shen young lady must not blame us. If you want to blame yourself for blocking the path of others." The two of them laughed sinisterly. One of them rushed towards Pei Lang while the other held his sword and headed toward Shen Miao. It was a killing move that did not leave any way of survival. Shen Miao's heart secretly knew that it was not good. She did not think that Pei Lang would find this place and it would be convenient for others to silence them. She pressed the bracelet on her wrist, but this bracelet could only be used in close proximity. At the critical moment, one saw two stones flying out from the air and without any deviation, hit the knees of the two black-clad people. Both of them cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Shwa shwa. Two rays of sword light flashed and two people suddenly rushed out and stabbed the black-clad person's sword into the other party's chest. Everything happened too fast and there was no chance for one to breathe. The two people that appeared behind were dressed as palace guards and looked at Shen Miao and made a bow. Pei Lang was about to speak when he saw a person jumping down from the roof. The person was tall and had a purple gold robe and a silver mask with a pair of peach blossom eyes that were as sharp as a knife. It was Prince Roy. "Your Highness Prince Roy," Pei Lang murmured. He was smart and with a little thought, the two guards in front of him should be Prince Roy's subordinates. As for the black-clothed man who wanted to kill them to silence them, he didn't know who he was. Even though he did not know what was the relationship between Shen Miao and Prince Roy, Pei Lang did not dare to neglect and was extremely vigilant in his heart, but a polite smile floated on his face as he cupped his hands. "Many thanks to your Highness Prince Roy for lending a helping hand." Prince Roy did not speak and coldly swept a glance at him. Although Pei Lang couldn't see his expression through the half-silver mask, he felt that his gaze was exceptionally cold, sending chills down his spine. Shen Miao frowned, but Prince Roy had already grabbed her arm and turned to walk out. Pei Lang was shocked and quickly called out, "Prince Roy must not." However, the two guards in front of her suddenly blocked her way. These two bodyguards looked fierce and their bodies exuded the aura of a devil who would kill without batting an eye. Pei Lang was a scholar and did not know martial arts. Even if he wanted to help, he could not. It was Shen Miao who was being dragged and stumbled along with them. She turned her head back and said with a calm face, "Gentleman Pei, go back first. I still have some matters with Prince Roy." Prince Roy's footsteps became faster. Pei Lang stared at the two disappearing figures. The two guards in front of him looked at him in confusion before they left. But there were still two corpses on the ground and Pei Lang could not stay for long. He did not know what was the relationship between Shen Miao and Prince Roy, but in his heart, there was an emptiness in that instant. Chapter 733. Shen Miao's arm was in pain from Xia Jingxing's pull. Xia Jingxing did not say a word and walked very fast. She tried her best to keep up with Xia Jingxing's pace, but the other person was tall and had long legs, thus she could not catch up and almost tripped over a few times. At the end, the anger in Shen Miao's heart rose and she said angrily, "Let go of me." Xia Jingxing walked to an empty corridor before suddenly releasing his hand. Shen Miao was grabbed by him for most of the way, and when her hand was suddenly released, she almost fell down. After he stood still, his anger surged and he said, "You're crazy." This garden was a little more outside compared to the previously deserted garden. Shen Miao was somewhat afraid of being seen by others and wanted to walk out by herself, but was pulled back by Xia Jingxing. He pushed her against the wall and held down her hands as he looked at her coldly. He wore a silver mask which revealed the fine contours of his face. His chin was beautiful, but his thin lips were tightly pursed. There was no longer the cynical smile in his eyes, and instead it was anger. He said word by word, "Shen Miao, you only have this little ability?" Shen Miao frowned as she looked at him. Xia Jingxing however reached out to hold her chin and forced her to raise her head to look at him. He looked down at Shen Miao from above, like a hunter looking down at his prey. Shen Miao did not like to be looked down at from above and struggled to leave. But she was after all a female, so how could she compete with Xia Jingxing's strength? That little bit of strength was like tickling Xia Jingxing's body. Xia Jingxing easily resolved her struggle and even slightly bent his knee to press against her leg, making her unable to move. But this stance was even more ambiguous. Shen Miao asked, "What do you want to do?" Xia Jingxing's tone was unable to discern whether he was happy or angry. Luo Ling, Su Mingfeng, Feng Zixian and now Pei Lang. So many people are heroes saving the beauty. I have underestimated you. Shen Miao did not speak. The strength in his hands suddenly increased and Shen Miao's chin was in pain as she frowned slightly. But that young man gritted his teeth, "Do not care who to marry and do not care if one will be forced to marry. You want to marry into the residence of the crown prince?" Shen Miao's heart moved as it seemed that the conversation between her and Pei Lang was heard by Xia Jingxing. What this person loved to do the most was to observe everything in the dark. If it was usual days, Shen Miao would not feel anything, but at this moment, there was some anger in her heart. It was as if someone had seen a secret that he didn't want to be made public, or if someone had seen his terrible side, and he was angry because he was ashamed. She sneered and said, "What does it matter if I marry the crown prince? Anyway, you know that I want to be the empress. The crown prince will eventually sit on the emperor's throne. Perhaps when I enter the eastern palace and fight to death the crown prince's consort, I will replace her and be the future Shen Empress of Mingqi. What is wrong with this?" These words were somewhat too vicious and Xia Jingxing's face became even more livid. He also smiled, but his smile was cold. It's a pity that the crown prince cannot sit on the throne. Shen Miao did not know where Xia Jingxing's inexplicable anger came from, but at this moment she was being questioned in such an embarrassing position, she felt very ashamed and wronged. Perhaps one would find it hard to grasp one's emotions under impulse, just like how she did not know where her grievances came from, but wanted to vent out all the unhappy things that she had been passively feeling these days. Xia Jingxing pinched her chin, pressed against her legs and imprisoned her hands. He was so unbelievably handsome that even when he was angry, there was a different kind of charm to it. That evil air lingered around him, making Shen Miao believe in a moment that the Xia Jingxing who was frivolous, careless, and did not care about anything was only a part of him. The other part of him was cold, rigid, and when he was angry, it made one's heart turn cold. No matter how good the scenery was, it was a pity that Shen Miao did not have the mood to appreciate it. She said, "Even if he does not sit on the throne, it has nothing to do with you." Shen Miao looked up at him and tried to speak calmly. "Why did your Highness Prince Roy come to question me? My relationship with you does not seem to be that good. What does it have to do with you who I marry or not marry?" When the words were said, Xia Jingxing smiled instead. He hooked up his lips with a smile that was not a smile and pulled Shen Miao's chin towards himself. "When you think of ways to haggle with me over every ounce, when you bargain with me about business, when you borrow my hands to kill, you are very capable. Why is it that until now, you only have this little ability?" Shen Miao's eyes felt a little sour. She really hated Xia Jingxing's current actions. However, she could not break free and hated herself for being so passive. She felt that her eyes were foggy and it was very uncomfortable. Xia Jingxing frowned and said, "You are not allowed to cry." Shen Miao's tears were about to fall as she felt extremely ashamed in her heart. She was a person who had lived for 2 lifetimes and actually wanted to cry just because of a few words from Xia Jingxing. What kind of appearance was this? But the grievances in her heart could not be relieved. She felt that her entire person had become chaotic. She was not willing to lose her face and had no way to break free. In a moment of desperation, Shen Miao glared at Xia Jingxing and said angrily, "Xia Jingxing, do not go too far." "Xia Jingxing?" An exclamation was heard from the bushes at the other end. Chapter 734. Xia Jingxing. Shen Miao and Xia Jingxing suddenly turned back and saw a person stumbling out from the bushes. When it neared, Shen Miao's body could not help but stiffen and subconsciously looked at Xie Jingxing's expression. But because Xie Jingxing was wearing a mask, one could not see anything. That person was Princess Rong Xian. Princess Rong Xian originally wanted to take a shortcut to enter, but when she came to this place, she saw Shen Miao being pulled by an unfamiliar male. Princess Rong Xian quickly let the palace maids wait outside and followed up herself. If others were to see Shen Miao together with an unfamiliar male, one feared that it would lead to rumors. Princess Rong Xian could trust Shen Miao's character. But just now she saw that Shen Miao did not seem to be willing and was afraid that Shen Miao was entangled by one of the princes in the palace or had gotten into trouble, thus she had the intention to help Shen Miao out of trouble. But it was not good to rush forward as it would be a misunderstanding. Initially she was far away and could not hear clearly what both of them were talking about, but after seeing that Shen Miao seemed to be about to cry, she anxiously walked forward and coincidentally heard Shen Miao's words, "Xie Jingxing, do not go too far." Princess Rong Xian cried out involuntarily. But one saw that tall and straight figure turning around, and it was an unfamiliar young male with half a silver mask on his face. He slightly nodded his head to her. Princess Rong Xian quickly walked forward, and at this time she saw that this male was Prince Rui. Prince Rui from the Great Liang. When he first came to the Ming Qi and entered the palace, Princess Rong Xian had seen him before. But she did not care about these court matters and did not deliberately inquire about it. At this moment when she saw that this person was Prince Rui, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. But just now when Shen Miao said Xie Jingxing, it was indeed Xie Jingxing. She did not hear wrongly. Princess Rong Xian looked at Shen Miao with some questioning. "Shen young lady, just now you called His Highness Prince Rui Xie Jingxing?" Before Shen Miao could speak, Prince Rui took the initiative to speak. He said, "This prince's name is Xie Yuan, little name Jingxing." Just now Shen young lady called this prince's little name. Shen Miao's heart was slightly relieved, thinking that Xie Jingxing's reaction this time was really fast and was always able to find a reason to brush it off. When he saw Princess Rong Xian's strange expression, he suddenly reacted and cursed Xie Jingxing in his heart. Other than relatives, only wives or lovers would call each other by their Xiao name. She called Xie Jingxing by his Xiao name, and who knew what would happen in Princess Rong Xian's eyes. Xie Jingxing definitely did it on purpose. Princess Rong Xian swept a glance between Prince Rui and Shen Miao before finally fixing her eyes on Prince Rui. There were some who looked similar, such as this purple robe. To be able to wear purple robes in such a noble and otherworldly manner, it could only be that naughty and mischievous youth who walked on horseback. But there was also something different about him. That unfamiliar, somewhat cold, decisive and ruthless aura that only a person in a high position would have. It was completely different from the youth in her memories. Xie Jingxing had long died. He died on the battlefield of the northern borderlands, with 10,000 arrows piercing through his heart. There was a sudden stab of pain in her heart, and Princess Rong Xian suddenly covered her heart and bent down. No matter how many times she thought of Xie Jingxing's death, she was unable to let it go. After Princess Yuqing's death, she treated Xie Jingxing as her own son. To lose a son in middle age, a white-haired person sending off a black-haired person, her sorrow was no less than Xie Ding's. Shen Miao quickly went forward to help her up, but that purple-clad youth stood with his hands behind his back. He lightly swept a glance at her and did not move at all. Princess Rong Xian's lips could not help but reveal a trace of a bitter smile. Yes, how could Prince Rui be Xie Jingxing? If it was Xie Jingxing, how could he be so indifferent, as if he was looking at a stranger, watching her struggle in this? If Xie Jingxing was still alive, how could he bear to see her in such pain? Chapter 735. Princess Rong Xian waved her hands. "Why are you here?" Shen Miao answered, "Her Majesty the Empress let me enter the palace." Princess Rong Xian frowned and looked at Xie Jingxing before asking, "Why is Prince Rui also here?" Shen Miao glanced at Xie Jingxing and said, "When I came out from the palace, the little eunuch who led the way had something to do, and after waiting for a long time, one got lost and coincidentally met your Highness Prince Roy, thus one asked your Highness Prince Roy to point the way for me. These words were almost blatantly lying. Just now Princess Rong Xian had clearly seen that it was Prince Roy who pulled Shen Miao all the way here. Moreover, Shen Miao also called Prince Roy's little name, so the relationship between the two of them was not ordinary. Princess Rong Xian was inexplicably somewhat angry. In the beginning, when Xie Jingxing brought Shen Miao to the princess residence, Princess Rong Xian thought that Xie Jingxing treated Shen Miao specially, and as she had more contact with Shen Miao, she liked Shen Miao even more. Thus Princess Rong Xian had the intention to matchmake Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing. If it was not for Xie Jingxing's death in battle, perhaps this marriage would have succeeded. Now Shen Miao had a close relationship with another male, and this male's name was also coincidentally Jingxing. It was like one's things were taken by others, and Princess Rong Xian's heart did not feel good. She also knew that it was impossible for Shen Miao not to marry for a lifetime, but Prince Roy was after all not a person of Ming Qi. Moreover, Princess Rong Xian had lived for most of her life and could see people clearly. This Prince Roy's actions were strange, and his entire body was full of danger. He was not a simple man, and if Shen Miao were to fall in love with this man, one feared that it would be too complicated. As such, Ben Gong will represent Shen young lady to thank your Highness Prince Roy, Princess Rong Xian said. But he tried his best to draw a clear line between Shen Miao and Prince Roy. Prince Roy nodded. Since the eunuch leading the way has disappeared, I have many palace maids. I'll have them bring you out. There is no need to trouble Prince Roy for the rest of the journey, Princess Rong Xian added. This attitude was clearly to guard against Prince Roy. Prince Roy didn't say anything else. He responded lightly and left first. After Prince Roy left, Princess Rong Xian then gave a sigh of relief and asked Shen Miao, "How did you get to know him?" Shen Miao did not expect that she would suddenly meet Princess Rong Xian today, and even more did not expect that Princess Rong Xian would hear the conversation between her and Xie Jingxing. She could not help but secretly complain. Normally Xie Jingxing's secret guards had good eyes and ears and would even be able to catch a mouse running by. Today, at such a crucial time, one did not know if they were blind that even Princess Rong Xian did not discover it. She said, "One had coincidentally met your Highness Prince Roy a few times and can be considered as acquaintances." Princess Rong Xian looked at her deeply and said, "Since you are not willing to say, Ben Gong will not force you to say it. It is just that. This person is not a Ming Qi's person and might have a plot against you. You are a smart young lady, and there are some things that you have to grasp yourself. Even if you do not think for yourself, you have to think for your parents and eldest brother." He was actually afraid that Shen Miao would be cheated by a man. Shen Miao did not know whether to laugh or cry in her heart. Since the misunderstanding had reached to this point, it seemed that it could not be resolved. Princess Rong Xian touched her chest and panted a few times. Upon seeing this, Shen Miao asked, "Where is the princess feeling uncomfortable?" "It is a heart disease that existed in the early years." Princess Rong Xian shook her head. "These few days it is very serious." Shen Miao saw that she was in pain and vaguely remembered that in the previous lifetime, Princess Rong Xian also had a heart disease, and the imperial physician said not to worry too much, lest the heart disease acted up and the pain would be severe. She said, "The princess should look for an imperial physician to take a good look, or go to the commoners to inquire about a doctor who specializes in treating heart diseases. It is very sad to be in pain like this. No harm." Princess Rong Xian waved her hands. "Ben Gong have lived till now and have enjoyed what one should enjoy and what one should not enjoy. This life is not a loss. Most likely one will not live for long, and Ben Gong also do not want to be tormented." Her voice gradually became lower. "After all, there is nothing worth to miss." Chapter 736. Shen Miao knew that she was thinking of Xie Jingxing again and did not know how to comfort her, so she could only say, "Little Marquis would not be happy to see princess like this." If he really cared about me as his emu, he would not be so heartless to leave. Princess Rong Xian put away the sadness on her face and patted Shen Miao's hands. Ben Gong had heard about Imperial older brother's intention to arrange a marriage for you. Ben Gong's visit to the palace today was to mention this matter to Imperial older brother. Shen Miao, you are also not willing to marry the crown prince, right? Shen Miao did not expect that Princess Rong Xian would intercede for her, and for a moment she sighed. In the previous lifetime she tried to please Princess Rong Xian, but all she got was Princess Rong Xian's contempt and disdain. In this lifetime, because of Xie Jingxing's relationship, Princess Rong Xian changed her view of her and was even willing to fight for Emperor Wen Hui's decision. Even though Shen Miao knew that Princess Rong Xian would not be able to control Emperor Wen Hui's decision, but she would remember this favor in her heart. Shen Miao said, I am not willing to marry into the Eastern Palace, but Princess need not force it. The matters of the world have their own heaven's will. Let nature take its course and the heavens will arrange it. Princess Rong Xian smiled instead and said, you are really able to see it clearly. She said, the time is not early, so I will not talk to you anymore. Go over there first and I will let the palace maids send you out. Shen Miao was sent out of the palace by Princess Rong Xian's palace maids, and Jingzhe and Gu Yu, who were waiting outside, came up to greet her. They first looked at Shen Miao up and down, and after making sure that Shen Miao was safe and sound, they then said, scared this servant to death. After waiting for such a long time, one thought that something happened. If young lady did not come out, these servants would have thought of ways to go in and search. Shen Miao laughed, it is not a dragon's pool or tiger's den. How would it be so scary? But her heart was secretly thinking about the two assassins that inexplicably appeared today. She did not know whose people they were, to actually dare to kill her in the palace. But if one were to investigate, if she died, it would only be harmful to the crown prince. If the other party did not want to see the crown prince being the only one, then it would be Prince Li's people. It was not possible for Fu Xiu-yi. The matter with Shen Wan and the crown prince of Qin had just happened not too long ago, and Fu Xiu-yi would not take the initiative to drill into the heart of the wind and waves. With his forbearing character, he would lurk for a period of time. Thinking about it, he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. In short, there was no good person in the Fu family. The Shen family and the Fu family were destined to be on opposite sides. It was either you die or I die. Since the other party was so ruthless, she would not show any mercy. Mo Qing stepped forward and indicated for Shen Miao to board the carriage and return to the Shen mansion. At the side of the street where people were coming and going at the entrance of the palace, there was a lively tavern. In the corner, there were people observing the movements of Mo Qing and his entourage. When he saw that Shen Miao came out of the palace safe and sound, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He then picked up the sword on the table and quietly left. When Shen Miao returned to the Shen mansion, naturally Shen Xiu and the rest surrounded Shen Miao to ask what the Empress said to her in the palace today. Shen Miao skipped over the matter with Xie Jingxing and only said what the Empress said to her. Everyone in the Shen family was once again worried. The imperial family's side was threatened by Shen Miao, and one feared that the days would be shortened by the day. One must think of a solution as soon as possible. Luo Shuayan then thought of those few people that came to the residence to propose marriage and wanted to ask Shen Miao's opinion. If among these few people, Shen Miao had a slightly better feeling towards any one of them, why not let it be like this first? After all, Shen Xian had inquired about it before. Even though they were not perfect, there were no problems in terms of character. But Shen Miao had just experienced Xie Jingxing's matter today and her mind was in a mess, so how would she have the mood to talk about it? When Luo Shuayan mentioned it, there was a rare trace of displeasure. When Shen Xian and the rest saw it, they looked at each other and thought that Shen Miao was disturbed by the Empress's words in the palace and it was not good to continue talking. Thus they let Shen Miao rest early in the room and dispersed. Chapter 737. When Shen Miao returned to the room, the sky was already dark. Gu Yu helped her to light the oil lamp. Jingzhe saw that Shen Miao was in a bad mood today and did not dare to stay in the room to disturb her. She pulled Guyu down and closed the door, leaving Shen Miao alone in the room. She was somewhat irritated as she combed her hair, but there seemed to be a nameless anger in her chest that could not be quelled. Thinking of Xie Jingxing's questioning words in the palace today, she could not help but feel even more aggrieved. What did her own matters have to do with Xie Jingxing? Could it be that Xie Jingxing still wanted to interfere in her life? But this marriage had come to this point, with the involvement of various forces and with the addition of Xie Jingxing, she became more and more helpless. Thinking of the words that Pei Lang said, Shen Miao's lips could not help but rise into a smile, but the smile was somewhat miserable. Which female would not want to marry a man who was in love with each other and grow old together? It was just that she was used to seeing the ups and downs of the world in her previous lifetime, and at the end the so-called love between her and Fu Xiu-yi was only her own wishful thinking. She had never really experienced what it was like to be in love with each other. But she knew that once one loved, one's thoughts would not be her own. She was not willing to be like in her previous lifetime, to foolishly hand the happiness of her life into the hands of others. It was very good now. It was much easier to control one's heart from the beginning than to let go of one's heart and then take it back. It was just that her heart was not comfortable. She sat under the lamp for a moment and actually did not think of anything. After a while, she blew out the lamp and climbed onto the couch to sleep. The snowstorm in the residence of Prince Rui was exceptionally big today. A kind of guard stood trembling in the wind, and even that small and sturdy white tiger was thrown outside the room as punishment. Today Prince Rui was not pleasing to the eye with everyone, and everyone in the residence of Prince Rui was punished from top to bottom. Even Ji Yushu and Gao Yang were locked up in the tower prison to face the wall. What kind of place was the tower prison? The people locked up were all vicious criminals, and to deal with these vicious criminals, torture was necessary. As the most cruel place in the MOU army, there were at least 49 types of torture. Many men with strong temperament went to the tower prison and came out after a few days, wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. When Tai Yi went in for the first time, he also recuperated on the bed for a long time, and vomited whatever he ate for a month. Ji Yushu and Gao Yang, the two young masters with delicate and tender bodies, entered the tower prison to face the wall. The guards of the residence of Prince Rui secretly shed tears of sympathy for these two. Nightingale quietly poked Nan Chi's arm and asked, "What's wrong with Master? Who provoked him?" Nan Chi made a hushed sound. Seeing that there was no movement in the bedroom, he then said in a low voice, "Fifth Shen young lady was bestowed a marriage by the palace." Master Gao and young Master Ji did not report it, so Master got angry. Shen Yang Nan, Shen Shen Nan, Nan Shen Nan, Nan was Nan 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 Nan. No wonder he was locked up in the tower prison. After he finished speaking, he glanced at the white tiger that was shivering in the cold wind and said sympathetically, "The heavens have taken pity on it. It's been fed well every day, and I thought it was no different from us. I didn't expect that when something happened, everyone would still be used as a punching bag." Hualong flipped her long hair and sighed faintly, anger surging to the crown for a beauty, yeah. In the room, Xie Jingxing handed the completed letter to Tai Yi. Tai Yi took a look and said with some hesitation, "Master, if His Majesty knows about the change of plans at this end." Xie Jingxing glanced at him and Tai Yi immediately shut his mouth and did not speak. It was definitely not a good idea to oppose Zhu Zi's decision when Master was in a bad mood. Chapter 738. Xie Jingxing put the other letter into the envelope and said, "What is going on at Pei Lang's side? Think of ways to inquire." He paused for a moment before continuing, "There is also Feng Zixian and Su Ming Feng." His brows slightly wrinkled and suddenly remembered something. "How is the matter with the medicinal herbs?" Tai Yi hurriedly said, "I've already sent someone to look for it. Once it's found, it will be sent to the medical hall immediately." Princess Rong Xian's heart ailment had recently acted up again, and there was a very scarce ingredient in the prescription that was only available in spring. Most of the medical houses in the Ding capital were bought to the princess residence, and these few days Princess Rong Xian did not have any new herbs, thus she could only bear it. Xia Jingxing sent people to secretly search for it with a large sum of money and then, conveniently, sell it to the medical hall. As soon as possible. Xia Jingxing pursed his lips. After thinking for a while, he suddenly stood up, put on his coat, and was about to leave. Tai Yi was stunned. Master still wants to go out? The debt is not settled. Xia Jingxing coldly snorted and left in a huff. It was already quiet outside of the Shen mansion, and Shen Miao's boudoir was already dark. It was obvious that she had slept for a long time. When Xia Jingxing arrived, Song Yang was sleeping on the tree, and when he saw him coming over, he was so scared that he almost fell down from the tree. She quickly got down and stood up straight to greet Xia Jing. Xia Jingxing looked towards the window, and Song Yang quickly said, "Young Furen is already resting." Xia Jingxing walked to the front of the window and saw a jade ring-like thing placed on the windowsill, and below it was a pendant. Xia Jingxing looked at Song Yang with a questioning gaze, and Song Yang said, "This is the safety pendant that Luo Ling secretly placed on the windowsill after young Furen had rested." Young Furen had not discovered it. When Xia Jingxing heard it, his eyes slightly moved, and he picked up the pendant with the dagger in his sleeve and threw it to Song Yang. "Keep it well." Song Yang was surprised for a moment before he heard Xia Jingxing continue, "The pet at home lacks a pendant." Song Yang. While Song Yang was speechless, Xia Jingxing had already opened the window and went in. On the bed in the room, Shen Miao was sleeping soundly. Xia Jingxing walked to the edge of the cliff and folded his arms as he looked for a while before raising his brows. "To be able to sleep, seems like one did not put my words to heart. You really have big guts." He sat down at the edge of the bed and casually picked up a cup of tea from the table in front of the window to drink before turning his head to look at Shen Miao's sleeping face. When the girl was asleep, she didn't have the usual dignified and calm sense of alienation. She shed all kinds of disguises and revealed her original appearance. Under the moonlight, her features were delicate and tender, which made people remember that she was a 16-year-old girl. They couldn't ignore this fact just because of the situation she was in and the means she had shown. Thinking of how he pinched Shen Miao's chin during the day and how she tried her best to hold back her tears, Xia Jingxing's heart felt a little guilty. He reached out to push the messy hair on Shen Miao's forehead to the back of her ears, but saw that young lady's eyelashes slightly trembling. Xia Jingxing's hand paused as he looked down and saw that the body wrapped in the cup was trembling slightly. He was pretending to be asleep. Xia Jingxing raised his brows and simply sat closer. His hands were on both sides of Shen Miao's body as he leaned over slightly, and a magnetic voice sounded in the room. "After helping so many times, why not repay me with your body?" He stared at Shen Miao's eyes and slowly leaned over. Shen Miao's body was extremely stiff, and that breathing sound seemed to be at the side of her mouth, and the pressure from top to bottom was getting closer. She suddenly pushed Xia Jingxing away and wanted to sit up as she said angrily, "What do you want to do?" There was some panic in her voice. Chapter 739. Xia Jingxing then pressed her back onto the bed. Shen Miao struggled uneasily, and Xia Jingxing restrained her movements a few times before saying in amusement, "What do you think I will do to you?" He then looked at her critically, "Dream on." Shen Miao was so angry that she wanted to call Mo Qing in to beat Xia Jingxing up. Because she only wore her inner clothes when she slept at night, after struggling with Xia Jingxing, her inner clothes had slipped off, revealing her snow-white shoulders, and one could faintly see the plum blossom dudu. Xia Jingxing was slightly startled when he saw that, and Shen Miao discovered where he was looking at. She was extremely angry and was about to scold someone. She saw Xia Jingxing suddenly throw the quilt and covered her head with it. Shen Miao stuck her head out from the quilt and said angrily, "Sick." Xia Jingxing ignored her and quickly wrapped her tightly in the quilt, wrapping her up like a silkworm pupa before pressing her down on the bed. Shen Miao could not move no matter what, and Xia Jingxing looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. Shen Miao finally got tired of struggling and asked, "What are you doing here?" "Shen Miao, behave yourself." Xia Jingxing frowned. "With this prince here, who would dare to force you to marry?" Shen Miao was so angry that she laughed. "You will not stay in Ming Qi for thousands or tens of thousands of years. There will be a day that I will marry. You can protect me today but not tomorrow. You can protect tomorrow, but there will be a day that you cannot protect." "If one can protect?" Xia Jingxing asked. Shen Miao was startled for a moment and did not speak. Xia Jingxing said, "Do you not care about marrying, or do you want to marry? What does that have to do with you? You ask too much." Shen Miao was still brooding over Xia Jingxing's rudeness in the day and did not intend to talk to him properly. But after thinking about it, how did she look like a person who had become an empress? She was more like those young ladies on the streets. Thinking that she dilly-dallied with this person in front of her for so long, Shen Miao became very dissatisfied with herself. Her temperamental look fell into Xia Jingxing's eyes, and Xia Jingxing was very inexplicable. He turned over and pressed Shen Miao under his body. With one hand by Shen Miao's head, he asked softly, "Who do you want to marry? Luo Ling, Su Ming Feng, Feng Zixian? Or Pei Lang?" He got closer and his handsome facial features were magnified in front of Shen Miao's eyes under the moonlight. He could smell the fragrant bamboo leaves on the other party's body. His eyes were extremely beautiful, but at this time, they also had an aggressive meaning, as if he wanted to force out people's hearts. Being stared at by such a pair of eyes, it was as if all the hidden thoughts in the bottom of one's heart were exposed. Shen Miao's heart suddenly panicked. This distance was too close, so close that she could hear the thumping of his heartbeat. It was like the beating of a drum, but she couldn't tell if it was hers or Xia Jingxing's. Shen Miao did not want to lose control of her emotions and do something that she did not know about, so she quickly shrank back. Her back was against the bed beam and Xia Jingxing reached out to protect her so that she would not hit her head. "This has nothing to do with you." Shen Miao quickly opened her mouth. "We only have a relationship of allies. Allies are meant to cooperate with each other. Does Prince Roy still want to manage my lifelong matter? Not to mention marriage, even if I give birth, divorce, or be crippled, it has nothing to do with you at all." Xia Jingxing was rather angry when he heard the first half of her sentence, but when he heard the second half, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. What nonsense is this? Do you really want to be a crippled empress? One did not know how many times he had heard her say it was to be a crippled empress. Xia Jingxing could not understand. Could it be that Shen Miao did not have confidence in herself, that she must think of such a miserable ending? Normally she did not look like a person who had an inferiority complex. Shen Miao was so angry that she spoke incoherently. "It has nothing to do with you. We are only allies. What right do you have to manage my matters?" Xia Jingxing stared at her, and it seemed that the anger from her provocation was rising. He was originally a proud person, and to be despised by others again and again, there was no need to mention how sullen his heart was. He asked, "Allies?" Shen Miao nodded her head. "Allies cannot manage your matters?" Shen Miao continued to nod her head. Xia Jingxing said straightforwardly, "All right." He quickly leaned over and pecked Shen Miao's lips. Shen Miao was instantly stunned and saw that handsome purple-clad youth speaking in an extremely nasty tone. "Now we are not allies. You." Shen Miao was unable to speak as her lips seemed to still have that gentle touch of a dragonfly touching the surface of the water. He laughed cynically. "So I can take care of your business." Finishing, he stood up from the bed and looked at Shen Miao condescendingly and threatened, "Remember, in the future to marry, have children, divorce or be crippled, one must have this prince's consent." Finishing, he looked coldly at the windowsill before disappearing in a flash. Outside the room, Song Yang was forced to eavesdrop on the corner of the wall for half a day until his face turned red, but he did not dare to leave. When Xia Jingxing came out, Song Yang bowed to him. Xia Jingxing said, in the future when someone sends something over, just throw it away. He took the safety pendant that Song Yang gave him and left with an unhappy face. Chapter 740. This night, someone deliberately messed up a pond of spring water, causing flowers to bloom in the cold winter wind. Naturally, there were people who flew into a rage when their plans fell through. Prince Zhou's and Prince Li's residence fell into the same entanglement. That night, someone knocked on Prince Zhou's door. Prince Zhou thought that it was a servant and called out to enter, but no one entered. Prince Zhou got up to open the door and two cold corpses hit him in the face. No one knew how these two corpses ran to the residence of Prince Zhou. Prince Zhou flew into a rage and heavily reprimanded all the guards on night duty. He then carefully searched the room and suspected that there was a traitor, but at the end there was nothing. The two corpses were also found out to be the assassins that were sent to assassinate Shen Miao today. Prince Zhou's heart was uneasy and sent someone to pass a message to Prince Jing that night. Both brothers planned to study the matter. As for Prince Li's side, it was even more violent. Someone directly threw two corpses from the wall into the mansion, which scared the guards of Prince Li's mansion. The guards went out to chase, but they couldn't even find a ghost shadow. Finally they found out that the two corpses were the assassins that Prince Li sent to assassinate Shen Miao. Prince Li was very upset and very uneasy. It was obvious that his assassins were killed and it was equivalent to cutting off his path, so naturally they were his enemies. His enemies in the Ding capital were actually so skilled that the entire residence of Prince Li's guards could not catch one of them, thus Prince Li was very dissatisfied. At the other end, the two brothers, Prince Zhou and Prince Jing, were talking. Prince Zhou asked, "Who do you think did it?" Prince Jing pondered for a moment. "Perhaps it was Prince Li, that's what I think too." Prince Zhou nodded his head. "Perhaps he wanted to use this to threaten me, or perhaps he had the same thoughts as me. But Prince Li had always been amiable on the surface and would not do such a thing." Prince Jing shook his head. "It might be the Crown Prince's doing." "Crown Prince?" Prince Zhou paused and nodded his head. "All these years the Crown Prince claimed to be ill. Who knows if it was a smokescreen? None of us had seen his means before. If it was him who caused me and Prince Li to fight, then the Crown Prince would be able to reap the benefits." "That's right." Prince Jing sighed, "But you must not forget about number 9. Forget about old Ninth." Zhou Wang waved his hand carelessly. "Even if Lao Jiu's mouth is noisy, he doesn't have the guts. He doesn't walk around the court much, so how could he have connections? Since he could come to Prince Zhou's mansion to make trouble, his subordinate must at least be a master. Don't know why, but I always feel that number 9 is not as simple as he looks." Prince Jing said, "You must not belittle him." In short, Prince Zhou sighed, "This matter is not so simple. Whether it is Prince Li or the Crown Prince, they both came with bad intentions. I'd like to see who's behind this." Prince Jing nodded his head in agreement. Prince Zhou and Prince Li naturally did not know that the person who wrote off the assassins sent by them and returned them to the original state was not the Crown Prince or the other party as they guessed, but someone who had nothing to do with them. However, this method of diverting the trouble was really good. The battle between the princes of Ming Qi unknowingly became more and more intense. As time went by, everyone in the Shen family was anxiously looking for a suitable candidate, but the imperial edict of the Ming Qi's imperial family did not come. It was not because of anything else but because Emperor Wen Hui was recently having a headache due to a matter. He asked the Crown Prince beside him, "What is the meaning of the Great Liang? Is it to go against Ming Qi?" Zhen had never seen such an arrogant person before. Chapter 741. The Crown Prince also did not dare to speak. Prince Rui of the Great Liang made a trip to the palace and one did not know what he said to Emperor Wen Hui. After Prince Rui left, Emperor Wen Hui flew into a rage and smashed tables and cups, almost flipping the imperial study. The Crown Prince guessed that he had said something presumptuous, else Emperor Wen Hui would not be so angry that he lost his composure. Emperor Wen Hui's heart was indeed thundering with rage. He was clearer than anyone else about Ming Qi's current national strength, and it was no longer as strong as when the old emperor was alive. Facing the slightly superior Qin country and the rich and powerful Great Liang, there was nothing to be proud of. In this tribute banquet, to put on such a large country's style, it was just to cover up one's guilty conscience, and to let the Great Liang and Qin country see that Ming Qi still had some ability. It was just that this was a self-deceiving action. Huang Fu Hao of the Qin country treated him with respect on the surface, but in fact he was not that good. Because of Princess Ming An's death, till now he was still holding on to the people from the Supreme Court of Justice, and the Ming Qi's officials were busy redressing the Qin country's princess grievances, and were not afraid of others laughing at them. But Emperor Wen Hui did not dare to refuse. After all, he wanted to rope in the Qin country to deal with the Great Liang together. There was no need to talk about the Great Liang. This Prince Rui had his own way of doing things, and Huang Fu Hao at least on the surface respected Emperor Wen Hui. Prince Rui however did things his own way, and one could not see any respect for him. Emperor Wen Hui kept comforting himself that this Prince Rui's temperament was like this, but one did not expect that yesterday when Prince Rui made a trip to the palace and talked in the imperial study, Emperor Wen Hui had the intention to befriend the Great Liang, but was faintly rejected by Prince Rui. Even though he did not say it explicitly, but his attitude did not leave any face for Emperor Wen Hui. Emperor Wen Hui was after all the ruler of a country, and after losing face, naturally his face did not look good and sunk. Who knew that Prince Rui did not care if he would be angry or not, and casually mentioned the few cities at the border of Ming Qi and the Great Liang, and his words implied that he wanted to take back the cities. Emperor Wen Hui's expression immediately changed. Those few cities were not very big, but there were several mines in the cities. The ores that were extracted from those mines could be used to forge large weapons. The city was coincidentally at the border of Ming Qi and the Great Liang. In the past, the Great Liang did not care about these, and the people living in the city were all commoners of Ming Qi. What did these words mean? This meant that the Great Liang wanted to occupy these cities. No matter how muddle-headed Emperor Wen Hui was in other matters, he was very sensitive to every inch of land. Great Liang first seized a few cities, who knew what else they would seize afterwards. Now he had his eyes on these few cities, and after a few more days, what would happen if he had his eyes on those cities, and after a few more days, what would happen to the Ding capital? After a few more days, he might as well lead his troops to flatten Ming Qi. With Ming Qi's military strength, it was impossible to contend against the Great Liang. Prince Rui was the envoy that the Great Liang sent over and also represented the intention of the Great Liang's Emperor Yonglu. Prince Rui's seemingly casual words revealed some of the ambitions of the Great Liang. What made Emperor Wen Hui's heart cry bitterly was that he knew the other party's ambition, but he did not dare to directly detain Prince Rui, this treacherous person. Because he couldn't withstand Emperor Yongli's rage. If there was an alliance with the Qin country, there would be some confidence, but if it was only Ming Qi alone, he could only endure. There was no dignity at all to be an emperor, and Emperor Wen Hui's heart was burning with anger. Who knows what the Great Liang would do next with this ambition? Yuan Shen Miao's marriage is not urgent. Emperor Wen Hui said, now Zhen cannot provoke Shen Xian as it is the crucial time. If Shen Xian were to be dissatisfied with Zhen, it would not be good for the Great Liang to take advantage. Chapter 742. When the Crown Prince heard it, he was somewhat disappointed but did not say anything more. He was clear of Emperor Wen Hui's temperament, and the more it was at this time, the more one must go along with the other. Thus he said, this son is not in a hurry and naturally prioritized the important matters. One did not think that the Great Liang would have hidden evil intentions. We cannot relax our vigilance against them. Seeing the Crown Prince like this, Emperor Wen Hui was very pleased and patted his shoulder. Zhen, no. Do not worry. Even though the Great Liang has such ambitions, Zhen will not sit still and wait for death. Tomorrow I will talk to the Crown Prince about the alliance. The Qin country knows of the great Liang's ambitions and will definitely be nervous. Forming an alliance with Ming Qi is natural, and at that time, there is no need to fear the great Liang. Zhen will then personally issue an edict at the Shen family's military power, and the Shen family's girl will be yours. In his words, he treated Shen Miao as an item and was certain that it would fall into his pocket. The crown prince smiled and complied, but his heart was somewhat blaming Prince Roy of the Great Liang for saying these words to Emperor Wenhui at this time. The timing was too coincidental. Prince Ding finally came up with such a brilliant plan for him, but it was thwarted by Prince Roy's words, making the crown prince's heart extremely uncomfortable. But there was nothing he could do. There was news from the palace that Shen Miao and the crown prince's marriage was temporarily suppressed. Even though one did not know what the reason was, Princess Rong Xian was also relieved. That day when she saw Shen Miao in the palace, she let her personal palace maid send Shen Miao out of the palace while she personally went to see Emperor Wenhui. Emperor Wenhui was still polite to Princess Rong Xian, and Princess Rong Xian said that she liked Shen Miao a lot and hoped that Emperor Wenhui would dispel the decision of marrying Shen Miao to the crown prince. Who knew that Emperor Wenhui immediately flew into a rage and even said the words females cannot discuss politics. Princess Rong Xian also had a straightforward temperament and said, "Isn't Shen Miao's marriage a female's marriage? How can it be involved with politics?" She immediately quarreled with Emperor Wenhui, and at the end Emperor Wenhui was angry and invited her out of the palace. That night, Princess Rong Xian's heart ailment acted up again. But it was fortunate that Emperor Wenhui did not suspect why Princess Rong Xian would do that. In the beginning, when Shen Miao met her a few times, it was Princess Rong Xian who saved her. In the eyes of outsiders, they would only feel that Princess Rong Xian and Shen Miao were fated. Thus it was reasonable for Princess Rong Xian to treat Shen Miao specially. No one would have thought that the reason why Princess Rong Xian protected Shen Miao was because she was helping Xie Jingxing to look after Shen Miao. That's good. Princess Rong Xian said to Gugu Yang beside her. Ben Gong thought that this time one would not be able to help her, and one's heart was very guilty. Now that it has been suppressed for the time being, there will be room to turn things around. This consort can go and give her a reply right now. Otherwise, I won't have the face-to-face Jingxing in the afterlife. Gugu Yang hurriedly advised. When the young marquis learns of the princess' painstaking efforts, he will certainly be gratified. As they were talking, they saw someone coming in from outside. The palace maid bowed and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, someone from the medical center has come to deliver medicine." Princess Rong Xian was slightly startled and asked, "Isn't there no more?" She had been suffering from a heart ailment for many years. She had a specific prescription for it, but there was an extremely rare and difficult drug in that prescription. There was only so much in a year, and almost all the medicine in the Ding capital's medical center had entered the princess residence. Originally, when Xie Jingxing was still around, one did not know where he got the means to go out to search for it, thus Princess Rong Xian was not worried at all. Afterwards, when Xie Jingxing died, the medicine in the medical center returned to the previous situation where there was no tomorrow. In winter, the medicine was even harder to find. Princess Rong Xian had been drinking the medicine that lacked the drug for a long time, and a few days ago she said that there was no more drug, but one did not expect that it would be sent over today. Chapter 743. The palace maid said happily. The physician in the medical shop said that yesterday there was a merchant that came from far away to sell medicine, and coincidentally there was a big basket of that medicine, so the medical shop took it all. Hearing from the physician that it was sufficient to last till next year, it is really a coincidence. Yang Gugu also followed and laughed. It is really good luck. Princess Rong Xian waved her hands unconcernedly. Send it to the kitchen. The palace maid quickly complied, and after the palace maid left, Princess Rong Xian then smiled bitterly and sighed. Originally, when Jingxing was around, he would also send one basket of medicine after another. Why is it now a rare luck? Yang Gugu knew that she was thinking of Xie Jingxing and her heart was sad. Just as she wanted to change the topic, she heard Princess Rong Xian said, "Help me to Xingji courtyard." Yang Gugu was surprised for a moment. Xingji Courtyard was a courtyard in the princess residence. At the beginning, after Princess Yuqing passed away, Princess Rong Xian was angry at Xia Ding's actions and brought Xia Jingxing to stay in the princess residence for a period of time. Xia Jingxing was born as white as jade, so Princess Rong Xian specially ordered people to make a courtyard for him, which was Xingji Courtyard. Afterwards, Xia Ding brought Xia Jingxing back, and Princess Rong Xian did not allow anyone to tear down Xingji Courtyard. After Xia Jingxing grew up, he would occasionally come to the princess residence to stay for a few days and rest in Xingji Courtyard. It was just that ever since Xia Jingxing died in battle 2 years ago, Princess Rong Xian ordered people to seal up Xingji Courtyard, and other than the daily cleaning, no one was allowed to enter. She was also afraid of seeing things and never stepped into Xingji Courtyard, but today, for the first time in 2 years, she wanted to go to Xingji Courtyard to take a look. Yang Gugu did not dare to disobey Princess Rong Xian's orders and was somewhat worried as she supported Princess Rong Xian to Xingji Courtyard. Princess Rong Xian said, "One do not know why these few days, one keep dreaming of Jingxing." As she spoke, her expression became strange. Yang Gugu was somewhat puzzled when she saw it. Princess Rong Xian's heart was somewhat uneasy. These few days, she had a dream every night and dreamt of a purple-clad youth with half a silver mask on his face. She did not know who it was, so she reached out to remove the other person's mask. That person had the same face as Xia Jingxing but called her Princess Rong Xian. It was the voice of Prince Rui of the Great Liang. Every time Princess Rong Xian woke up from her dreams, she would feel that her back was drenched in sweat. She was thinking, could it be that day when she saw Shen Miao and Prince Rui's entanglement, because of the other party's little words, Xia Jingxing and Prince Rui were mixed together, to the extent that he was possessed at night? The more she thought about it, the more she missed Xia Jingxing and thought of going to the Xingji Courtyard to take a look. While Zhang Xian was deep in thought, he had already arrived at the Xingji Courtyard. The guards outside the courtyard were somewhat surprised to see her. Princess Rong Xian had not stepped in here for 2 years and did not allow others to enter. The guards opened the way and Princess Rong Xian and Yang Gugu walked in. The furnishings in the house were exactly the same as 2 years ago. Because it was cleaned every day, not a speck of dust fell. It looked brand new and clean as if it was yesterday. It made Princess Rong Xian in a trance that when she turned around, she would be able to see that handsome and beautiful youth lying on the bed with his legs crossed, casually eating an apple. On the shelf were all the little toys that Xia Jingxing liked to play with since young, and on the chair were Xia Jingxing's old clothes. Princess Rong Xian walked to the side of the clothes and picked it up. She reached out to touch the lines on it and reminisced, it is exactly the same as before. Yang Gugu did not know what to say and was afraid that Princess Rong Xian would sink into the memories of the past and be sad. She said, the golden thread on it is still brand new. Princess Rong Xian laughed, Jingxing, this child has many rules. When he was young, one made colorful clothes for him but he was not willing to wear them. He just liked purple. Bengong disdained that purple was old and heavy and not suitable for a child to wear. One wanted to embroider flowers on it but he despised it very much. Afterwards it was the embroidery lady in the palace who used golden thread to embroider dark lines on the edges of the robes before he was willing to wear it. Want to be gorgeous but do not want to wear it on the body. There are many crafty ideas. Chapter 744. Yang Gugu also followed and laughed. Little Marquis is noble in gold and precious in jade. Only Little Marquis would look good when wearing it. When His Highness brought Little Marquis into the palace, others thought that he was a prince. That appearance was like one of the imperial family's people. Even Yuqing did not have this kind of bearing at the beginning. Princess Rong Xian also laughed along as she caressed the golden embroidered patterns on the corner of the robe. But as she laughed and laughed, she could not laugh anymore. Her expression gradually became serious. Just like what she and Gugu had said, Xia Jingxing was very picky about his clothes and loved to wear purple. He liked to wear gorgeous but did not want to be too ostentatious and must use dark golden threads to embroider patterns on the corner of the robe. Because his requirements were high, the threads were very fine and the patterns were very special. But that day in the palace, Prince Roy, who was pulling Shen Miao, was wearing a purple gold robe and was pulling Shen Miao's hands upwards. The gold thread on his sleeves was exactly the same as what Xie Jingxing used to wear. Princess Rong Xian's health was not good, but her eyes were not blind. That day when she saw Prince Roy and heard Shen Miao calling Prince Roy Xie Jingxing, there was a moment when she thought that Prince Roy was Xie Jingxing. But afterwards when she saw Prince Roy's demeanor and temperament, it was very unfamiliar, and after listening to Prince Roy's explanation, she dispelled this thought. But she always felt that something was not right, and after returning to the princess residence, she frequently thought of Xie Jingxing and Prince Roy. She had always thought that the reason why she was brooding over it was because Prince Roy and Xie Jingxing's words were exactly the same, but now it was clear in a flash that it had nothing to do with the name, but it was because she saw the corner of the other person's sleeves. After interacting with Xie Jingxing for more than 10 years, Princess Rong Xian treated Xie Jingxing as her own child, and a mother would always be especially concerned about the child's matters, even if it was a small matter. She could clearly remember the pattern on the sleeves, but after Xie Jingxing's death, she had not seen this pattern for 2 years and could not remember it for a moment. But today she remembered that it was exactly the same pattern as Prince Roy. Some things were faded in the dark. Sometimes, all that was needed was a primer, just like stringing all the scattered beads together, and everything would have an answer. The same loved to wear purple, the same pattern on the sleeves, the same name, Jingxing, and the same had a special relationship with Shen Miao. Princess Rong Xian suddenly remembered that basket of medicine. Why didn't he have it before? Why did he have it today? Was it because a few days ago she had a heart disease in front of Prince Roy, and in just a few days there were merchants that came from far away to sell medicinal herbs? If there were too many coincidences, it wouldn't be a coincidence anymore. Once the seed of doubt sprouted, there was no way it could grow back. It quickly sprouted branches in its heart and quickly grew into a towering tree, until it took root in the soil and stood there unshakably. Thinking about it now, at such a young age, Xie Jingxing had an indescribable air of nobility. One thought that it was because of his good upbringing, but did not know that perhaps it was because of the difference in blood. Even though his temperament and figure had changed, there were some things that could not be changed. For example, some small habits, such as the connection between family members. Princess Rong Xian suddenly squatted down and pressed on her chest. Yang Gugu jumped in shock as she saw Princess Rong Xian's pale face, and large beads of sweat started to form on her forehead. He hastily shouted, "Guards! Call the doctor. The princess' heart disease is acting up again." A hand suddenly grabbed Yang Gugu's hand. Princess Rong Xian's face was in pain, but her tone was very determined. "Help me back to the study and bring an invitation over. She must personally verify one thing." Chapter 745. When Shen Miao woke up, Luo Shuayan happily told her that her marriage with the crown prince was temporarily suppressed in the palace. It was related to Prince Roy that Shen Xian got through the palace. One heard that when Prince Roy and Emperor Wen Hui were chatting, they inadvertently mentioned the few cities at the border. Emperor Wen Hui was worried that the great Liang did not have good intentions, and at this critical juncture, he wanted to rope in Shen Xian, this strong general. Thus he would not mention Shen Miao's marriage for the time being. Luo Shuayan said, "Prince Roy's arrival is coincidental, but it has solved Jiao's urgent problem. With more time, we can slowly pick out suitable talents for Jiao." Luo Shuayan's words were unintentional, but Shen Miao listened attentively. Naturally she knew that Prince Roy did not unintentionally mention the matter of the cities and provoked Emperor Wen Hui to change his mind. At the same time that she breathed a sigh of relief, Shen Miao could not help but be secretly shocked by Xie Jingxing's methods. Xie Jingxing's methods could not be said to be brilliant, but it was very effective. Just a few words were able to provoke the emperor to hesitate and not dare to take action. The crown prince's marriage was ruined and Prince Ding's plans were ruined. It was really satisfying to shoot several eagles with one arrow. Previously when Xie Jingxing mentioned this matter, he did not seem to care about it, but he actually had this ability. Thinking about it, Shen Miao felt somewhat indignant in her heart. The dangerous situation that she found difficult was easily resolved in Xie Jingxing's hands, which made her seem incompetent. Her mind could not help but think of Xie Jingxing's frivolous actions that night and could not wait to beat Xie Jingxing up. Luo Tan said, "Youngest Biao's sister, why are you clutching this book so tightly for? The pages are about to break." Shen Miao then recovered to her senses and quickly released her hands. She was somewhat embarrassed as recently when she thought of Xie Jingxing, her emotions were somewhat out of control. It was all because the other party's actions were too unexpected that only she was brooding over it. Luo Tan held her chin with both hands and looked at her mischievously. "Hey, are you thinking that Brother Ling, young Master Su, and Big Brother Feng are all very good and you can't decide which one to choose?" Shen Miao said, thinking too much. Luo Tan still wanted to say something when she saw Luo Ling walking in from outside. Luo Tan stuck out her tongue and called out, "Older Brother Ling." Luo Ling smiled. "What are you all talking about?" "We're talking about my cousin's marriage." Luo Tan said loudly, "Youngest Biao's sister has not decided who to marry yet. I came over to inquire about the news." Shen Miao felt helpless in her heart. Could Luo Tan have a little bit of a female's tactfulness and say it out loud? It was fortunate that Shen Miao was someone who had seen the world. If it was an ordinary female, one would be embarrassed to death. Shen Miao did not have any reaction, but Luo Ling was somewhat embarrassed. He covered his mouth with his hand and coughed twice. Looking around, he asked, "Younger cousin, do you like the safety pendant?" "Pendant of safety?" Shen Miao frowned and asked, "What pendant of safety?" Luo Ling was surprised for a moment and said, "It was me yesterday." Before he could finish, he was interrupted by the servants outside. After speaking, Luo Shuiyan asked Shen Miao to go to the front hall. Luo Ling swallowed the words in his mouth and smiled to let Shen Miao go first. Shen Miao smiled apologetically at him and said, "I will speak to older brother Ling later." When one reached the front hall, one then knew that it was the people from the princess residence that came to the Shen mansion. It was said that Princess Rong Xian had sent an invitation to Shen Miao, asking Shen Miao to make a trip to the princess residence. Princess Rong Xian had saved Shen Miao several times and Shen Xian and wife were very grateful to her, thus there was no reason to refuse. Shen Miao was even more unable to say anything. She received the invitation with a smile, but her heart was unusually heavy. If it was in the past when Princess Rong Xian sent an invitation to Shen Miao would not hesitate to accept it. In all fairness, Princess Rong Xian treated her well, and because of her relationship with Xie Jingxing, she took care of her. When she knew that Emperor Wen Hui had the intention to introduce Shen Miao to the crown prince, she still wanted to speak up for Shen Miao, thus Shen Miao's heart was grateful. But Princess Rong Xian just had to send an invitation at this time. If it was about the matter of the crown prince, she would have directly sent someone to say it. To send an invitation to the princess residence, it was obvious that she wanted to discuss some matters face to face. But what matter was so important? Princess Rong Xian, who was so important that she did not see anyone, would take the initiative to invite Shen Miao to the princess residence. Shen Miao could not help but think of that day in the palace when she and Xie Jingxing were involved and were seen by Princess Rong Xian. At that time she called out Xie Jingxing's name and was later deceived by Xie Jingxing, but her heart felt uneasy. If it was a person who understood and loved deeply, no matter what the other party had become, there would always be some old traces to follow. Shen Miao's intuition had always been very accurate. She had never thought that Xie Jingxing and Princess Rong Xian would be able to hide safely. It was just that this guess was too scary and the consequences were unpredictable, so she did not want to think too deeply about it. But escaping was not a solution as trouble came to the door. Shen Miao felt that Princess Rong Xian might have found some suspicious points, but she was unable to reject this invitation because to reject was to admit it. Chapter 746. Princess Rong Xian's invitation was sent to Shen Miao on the afternoon of the second day. Luo Shuayan also let Shen Xian prepare a bunch of gifts for Shen Miao to bring to the princess residence. Because Princess Rong Xian had helped Shen Miao a lot, Luo Shuayan wanted to express her gratitude to Princess Rong Xian. In order to prevent any accidents on the road, Shen Xiu brought along many guards and Ah Qi and Mo Qing also followed. Even so, throughout the journey, Shen Miao's expression could not be said to be relaxed. When Jingzhe and Gu Yu saw this, they thought that Shen Miao was worried about the safety of the journey and comforted her for a long time. In the carriage, Shen Miao kept thinking about how to deal with Princess Rong Xian's words upon reaching the princess residence. If Princess Rong Xian were to ask about Xie Jingxing's matter, it would dispel the other suspicions. But Princess Rong Xian was a very cautious person, and once suspicions were raised, it would be very difficult to eliminate it. Shen Miao felt a headache coming on. Jingzhe smiled. What is young lady thinking about to be so serious? This servant had not seen young lady like this for a long time. Shen Miao was slightly startled and was somewhat astonished in her heart. That's right, ever since she was reborn, she relied on the fact that she knew the path of her previous life, and her journey had been exceptionally smooth. Because of Luo Shuayan, Shen Xian and Shen Xiu's matter, it was not particularly difficult to handle. As for other people, she would care about those that had benefits for her, like Lu Ying and Pei Lang, but what did other people's matters have to do with her? She was now racking her brains to think of an excuse for Xie Jingxing, but what was the relationship between Xie Jingxing and her? Was it necessary to treat him with such devotion? Shen Miao was somewhat annoyed with herself, and she also understood that she had a temperament that liked to get stuck in a dead end. There was a voice in his heart that said that this was all Xie Jingxing's own trouble and should be solved by Xie Jingxing himself. The other voice could not bear for Xie Jingxing to deal with this troublesome matter alone. After all, to let Xie Jingxing reappear in front of Princess Rong Xian with an additional identity of Prince Roy of the Great Liang, no matter if it was Princess Rong Xian or Xie Jingxing, it was too cruel. Unknowingly, before Shen Miao could think of a countermeasure, the horse carriage had already arrived at the entrance of the princess residence. Almost all the servants in the princess residence had an impression of Shen Miao, so naturally they respectfully welcomed her in. Shen Miao let Mo Qing and the rest stay at the residence's entrance to help move the gifts for Princess Rong Xian to the storeroom. The palace maid brought Shen Miao inside. But he directly brought her to Princess Rong Xian's bedroom. Even though Princess Rong Xian's figure was not commonly seen in court and was usually very low-key, but the princess residence was after all spacious and grand. It was just that after the Fuma's death, Princess Rong Xian was widowed and did not care much about these worldly possessions. Therefore, the bedroom was simple and clean. The moment one entered, it felt a little cold and cheerless. Princess Rong Xian was drinking the sweet soup that was sent from the kitchen, and upon seeing Shen Miao arrive, she instructed the servants to scoop a bowl for Shen Miao. She smiled and said, "This is the new chef. He's very good at making desserts and sweet soups. I don't know if you'll be used to them. This palace's food is better than the ones in the palace. You should try it too." Shen Miao thanked Princess Rong Xian and picked up the bowl to taste. She did not really like sweets, but because of Princess Rong Xian, she could not refuse. As she was eating, she was observing Princess Rong Xian's expression. Princess Rong Xian's complexion was much better compared to the day they met in the palace. Her face was much rosier and her mood seemed to be not bad, as there was a smile on her face. Shen Miao said, "Princess's health seems to be much better." The medical hall had recently received a rare medicinal herb, and the kitchen had been decocting it for Ben Gong to drink. It would be difficult for Ben Gong's health to not be good. Princess Rong Xian sighed, "It is really luck." In the past it was not easy to find this medicinal herb, but one did not expect to encounter it at this time. There was a bit of surprise in her tone. Chapter 747. Shen Miao followed Princess Rong Xian's words, but her heart felt somewhat strange. Princess Rong Xian was not such a trivial person, and even if they were to chat, it would be interesting and insightful matters. This was her own matter, so there was no need to specially mention it to her. But Shen Miao was unable to understand the meaning of these words. She originally thought that Princess Rong Xian would ask about Xie Jingxing's matter today, but one did not expect that Princess Rong Xian did not mention it at all and seemed like she did not intend to mention it. Instead, she changed the topic and talked about how Emperor Wen Hui suppressed Shen Miao's marriage a few days ago. Imperial older brother had always been stubborn and seemed to want you to be his daughter-in-law, even though Ben Gong felt that it was not appropriate. But that day after you left, Ben Gong personally pleaded with Imperial older brother and wanted him to dispel this idea, but Imperial older brother did not agree. Afterwards it was all thanks to Prince Roy's blessings. She looked at Shen Miao and smiled. One think that General Shen had already inquired about the reason and told you about it. Shen Miao nodded her head and her heart secretly became alert. Even though these words are somewhat disgraceful, Ben Gong also do not hope that the great Liang would have any ambitions towards Ming Qi. But one have to thank Prince Roy. If it was not for his words, Imperial older brother would not have changed his mind. One fear that your marriage would not be suppressed like now. Shen Miao remained silent, as the more she spoke at this time, the more mistakes she would make. But she did not expect that Princess Rong Xian would suddenly pull her hand and said with a smile, "Previously Ben Gong saw that your relationship with Prince Roy of the Great Liang was not shallow. Ben Gong is after all older than you and have eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. It is also the same when looking at people. Prince Roy's identity is special and Ben Gong thought that you are young and would inevitably be deceived. One did not think that he would be a loyal person, and this time he opened his mouth at this juncture. Ben Gong thought that it would be somewhat forced to say that it was intentional. Princess Rong Xian did not have such an attitude towards Prince Roy previously, and the difference was so big. Shen Miao became more cautious, but there was no trace of panic on her face. She only smiled gently and replied, "Prince Roy is a dragon and phoenix among men, and this official's daughter is a floating weed. Naturally one cannot be compared. This official's daughter is also not so arrogant to think that Prince Roy would speak up for this official's daughter." This was tactfully denying the matter of having a close relationship with Prince Roy. "Ben Gong know that you are shy. Princess Rong Xian was especially stubborn today. Ben Gong will not say it out." Shen Miao still wanted to speak, but Princess Rong Xian turned her head to talk about other matters. Princess Rong Xian was especially excited today and pulled Shen Miao to talk for a long time. Just like when Prince Roy was mentioned just now, Shen Miao thought that Princess Rong Xian would continue to inquire, but Princess Rong Xian turned her head and asked if Luo Shuiyan had any suitable young talents that Shen Miao could see. From noon till night fell, Princess Rong Xian did not have the slightest intention to end today's conversation and send Shen Miao back to the residence. Shen Miao was also somewhat unable to grasp Princess Rong Xian's meaning. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu on the other hand wanted Shen Miao to return earlier, as it was not easy to travel in the dark and the carriage could not be seen clearly. But this was the princess residence. The princess did not speak and Shen Miao did not speak, so how could it be the two of them who spoke? When the last pot of tea was finished, Princess Rong Xian stood up and Jing Zhe and Gu Yu's heart was slightly relieved. Thinking that it was rare for Princess Rong Xian to be in such high spirits today, it was not easy for them to return to the Shen mansion. Who knew that Princess Rong Xian affectionately pulled Shen Miao's hands and said with a smile, "Accompany me to the courtyard for a stroll." Jing Zhe and Gu Yu's jaws dropped. This was the princess residence and Princess Rong Xian had lived here for so many years. She would stroll around her own courtyard every day, but for no rhyme or reason when Shen Miao came over as a guest, she let others stroll around the courtyard. Moreover, it was so dark and it was very cold outside, so one was not afraid of catching a cold when strolling around the courtyard. Did all the princesses of the imperial family have this kind of quirk? Chapter 748. However, Shen Miao understood. It was obvious that Princess Rong Xian had ulterior motives and invited Shen Miao to the princess residence today, it was not just to have Shen Miao accompany her to chat. Princess Rong Xian definitely had her own plans. But Shen Miao could not refuse. She said, "All right." Out of Jing Zhe's and Gu Yu's expectations, the courtyard that Princess Rong Xian brought Shen Miao to stroll around was actually a side courtyard. In the dark of the night, there were no lanterns at the door and one could not see clearly what was written on the signboard. Princess Rong Xian pulled Shen Miao into the room and smiled. This courtyard is called Xingji Courtyard. Shen Miao's heart thumped and knew what Princess Rong Xian was going to say next. Sure enough, when Princess Rong Xian entered the room, her hands fondled the little things on the shelf with nostalgia and said with a smile, "This is where Jing Xing lived." Jing Zhe and Gu Yu followed behind and were somewhat surprised when they heard it. The place where the little marquis of the Xia family stayed? Jing Xing did not have a mother since he was young, and after Yu Qing left, Ben Gong pitied him for having such a rough life at such a young age and hated the Marquis of Linan for not staying at home, causing the inner courtyard to catch fire. Yu Qing's life was bitter. Even before her death, she still had to be called a jealous woman. However, at that time, Madame Fong took advantage of a loophole and could not openly deal with her. Otherwise, Yu Qing would be cursed in the underworld. At that time, Ben Gong was angry but also afraid that Fong Shi would use some other sinister method, so Ben Gong took Jing Xing back to the Princess Fu to raise him. Jing Xing has always been mischievous and is very close to me. I don't have a son of my own, so I thought that it wouldn't be a bad idea to keep Jing Xing by my side. Later, I built the Xingji courtyard for Jing Xing here. When Princess Rong Xian talked about these matters, she sighed. With her description, Shen Miao seemed to be able to see the appearance of a baby in swaddling clothes crying piteously for food. Shen Miao was fortunate that her parents were healthy and loved her very much. Even though they were estranged due to the instigation of the second and third household of the Shen family, it could still be remedied. But Xia Jingxing did not have a mother since he was born. In other words, when he was born, in Ming Qi's fake identity, he played a pitiful role and did not have a smooth journey. Jingxing was raised very well by Ben Gong here. The Marquis of Linan came over several times to ask for him, and even from Imperial older brother's side, Ben Gong still did not appreciate it. But afterwards Madame Fong gave birth to 2 sons, thus Ben Gong returned Jingxing. Princess Rong Xian turned and looked at Shen Miao. "Do you know why?" Shen Miao thought for a moment and said, "Because little Xia Marquis is the D-son of the residence of the Marquis of Linan, thus the residence of the Marquis of Linan should be inherited by him. If the little Marquis were to stay in the princess residence, Madame Fong and the 2 Shu brothers of the Xia family would take advantage of it. Perhaps the position of the Marquis of Linan would fall into the hands of the 2 brothers in the future." Princess Rong Xian smiled when she heard it. "Ben Gong already knew that you are a penetrating person. When I was at your age, it was impossible for me to think of this." Shen Miao smiled and declined to comment. Naturally, a young lady who had never given birth to a child would naturally not plan for the child, so how would she look at it for a long time? But she was a woman who had given birth to 2 children. If it was Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she would also let them go back. It was something that belonged to one's child, so how could it be taken advantage of by others? Even though Jingxing had returned, but his relationship with Ben Gong is very good. It is said that blood is thicker than water. Ben Gong is afraid that after he and the Marquis of Linan get along, he would be provoked by vile people and would have complaints against Ben Gong and Yu Qing. But what made Ben Gong surprised and gratified was that his relationship with the Marquis of Linan was not that good. No matter how the Marquis of Linan fawned on him, he would not be salty nor indifferent. Sometimes Ben Gong thought that he and the Marquis of Linan did not look like a pair of father and son, so how would there be the saying that blood is thicker than water? Chapter 749. Shen Miao's heart became heavy. The meaning in Princess Rong Xian's words was just too strong. Princess Rong Xian picked up a small mirror on the shelf and said, "Actually it is not that the Marquis of Linan does not look like a pair of father and son, and also not like Yu Qing. The Marquis of Lineage is a muddle-headed person but is somewhat indecisive and would not be clear on some matters, else he would not be schemed against by Madame Fong, that little slut. Yu Qing is a silly one who wholeheartedly threw herself onto a man and at the end was secretly hurt and even lost her life, letting her own child suffer for no reason. Jing Xing's temperament was different from the both of them. Jing Xing looked unbearably stubborn but was extremely decisive in doing things. Once he obtained a sword that was valued by his good friend. His good friend did not say anything but he saw it in his eyes. Afterwards he said that he fancied his friend's mirror and used his own sword to exchange. Ben Gong asked him, he obviously did not like that mirror, so why did he lie? But he told Ben Gong that it was because he also did not like that sword. He seemed to be very clear on what he wanted and what he did not want from a very young age. He would not even take a glance at things that he did not want and would firmly hold on to the things that he wanted from the start. He always smiled and was very likable to young ladies, but he did not have any special expression to any young lady. He was actually more indifferent than anyone else. Princess Rong Xian stared at Shen Miao and for a moment, Shen Miao felt that Princess Rong Xian and Xia Jingxing were somewhat similar in some aspects, especially when they stared sharply at one, as if they could see through one's soul. That kind of oppressive feeling was once again displayed from this imperial princess who was no longer young. She opened her mouth and said, Ben Gong thought that perhaps the Marquis of Lineage was something that he did not need in his eyes, so from the start he did not have any kinship with the Marquis of Lineage and Ben Gong always thought that Ben Gong was a person that he wanted to firmly hold on to, but now it seems that Ben Gong was wrong. Ben Gong was also a person that he did not need, right? That sentence of, is it right, was directed at Shen Miao. Jing Zhe and Gu Yu had already been pulled out by Princess Rong Xian's personal female official, Yang Gugu, and there was no one else in the room. Shen Miao quietly listened and said, Little Marquis has placed the princess in his heart. Shen Miao, Ben Gong know that you are exceptionally intelligent and good at guessing people's hearts. Therefore, there's no need to coax this consort. Princess Rong Xian sneered. If one really put Ben Gong in one's heart, then why would one deceive Ben Gong with the news of fake death? Also, why would one see Ben Gong unable to sleep and feel uneasy after learning of his death? It was obvious that everything had been arranged from the start, but one wanted to deceive Ben Gong's trust and sincerity. It was obviously right in front of one's eyes, but one refused to acknowledge it and used a clumsy excuse. Shen Miao, tell Ben Gong, are you putting Ben Gong in your heart? When he said the last sentence, his tone suddenly became sharp, almost with a hint of anger. Shen Miao's heart sank. In the end, he still knew. But she still could not admit it. There were many things that could not be said even if one knew what the outcome would be. Even if the evidence was conclusive, he couldn't say it. Princess Rong Xian was the princess of Ming Qi and Xia Jingxing was Prince Rui of the Great Liang. Once this news was confirmed and she personally said it out, Shen Miao was unable to confirm what kind of change it would bring to the situation and how much trouble it would bring to Xia Jingxing. It was impossible for her to admit it so rashly. Even if Princess Rong Xian had already decided in her heart. She said, this official's daughter does not understand what the princess is saying. Princess Rong Xian looked at her with contempt. The previous kindness and gentleness had disappeared and what replaced it was a condescending look that could easily pinch an ant to death. That was the most common expression of the Fu family and Shen Miao could see it every day. She suddenly felt a sense of disgust in her heart. It was not disgust at Princess Rong Xian, but most likely she disgust at the blood of the Fu family that flowed in Princess Rong Xian's bones, causing them to have some similarities in some aspects. Princess Rong Xian said, do you know what is the crime of deceiving the imperial family? Chapter 750. The crime of deceiving the ruler. Shen Miao answered. Colluding with the enemy to commit treason, the crime of deceiving the monarch. These 8 words are enough to have your entire Shen family beheaded and 9 generations executed. I'm sure you've seen what happened to Shen Wan. Do you know what you're saying right now? Do you know what kind of lies you're telling me? Shen Miao said, this official's daughter did not say anything. You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin? Princess Rong Xian's voice was filled with bone-chilling coldness. If Ben Gong wants you to die, it is an easy matter. If your answer today is not satisfactory to Ben Gong only need to mention it to Imperial older brother, and what awaits your Shen family will be a disaster. Are you going to let your parents and brothers pay with their lives because of your willfulness? Shen Miao remained silent. Princess Rong Xian slowly said, Now tell Ben Gong that Prince Roy is the Xie Jingxing who died in battle, right? No. The two firm words came out of Shen Miao's mouth without wavering. It was as if those terrifying threats from before were nothing but smoke and clouds, never leaving a trace in her heart. Shen Miao. Princess Rong Xian was furious. Ben Gong will let the Shen family be punished. You need evidence for everything. As long as I'm willing, I don't need evidence to punish you. Shen Miao almost sneered in her heart. The Fu family was just like this, so overbearing and domineering. Even if it was Princess Rong Xian who looked to be the most impartial, when faced with the matters that one wanted to know, one would not hesitate to use the imperial power to bully and humiliate. Humans are complicated, and humans are selfish. This princess will ask you again. Is Prince Roy Xie Jingxing? No. Princess Rong Xian almost flew into a rage. Normally she admired Shen Miao's calm and collected manner, but when this calm and collected manner was used to deal with her, Princess Rong Xian felt that she was facing a copper pea that one could not find any flaws. Normal young ladies would be scared with just a few threatening words, but Shen Miao was not afraid. Someone come. Princess Rong Xian's face sank. Give Shen Miao to me. Before she could finish, the rest of her words were swallowed back into her throat. A purple figure leaped in from outside the window. He had leaped in from the back window. There was no one guarding the backyard, so no one saw him. That person was wearing a dark purple brocade robe, and the golden thread at the corner of the robe was embroidered with a design that Princess Rong Xian was most familiar with. After he entered the room, he looked around unhurriedly and strolled over to Shen Miao. As if he was in his own residence, he stood still in front of Princess Rong Xian. Only then did she say lazily and unhurriedly, She's timid, Aunt Rong, don't scare her. When Princess Rong Xian saw this person, she kept quiet and stood blankly at the same spot. When she heard the words Rong Yi, she pointed at the other person and trembled so much that she could not speak. In this not very spacious room, the light swayed slightly. That person played with the thumb ring on her thumb. She wore a half-silver mask. The mask glowed with a cold light, revealing her red lips with a slight smile. However, it did not make people feel warm at all. Shen Miao stared at Xie Jingxing in disbelief. She had never thought that Xie Jingxing would dare to appear at this time and openly appear in the princess residence in front of Princess Rong Xian. One had to know that Xie Jingxing had died in the battlefield of the northern Jiang 2 years ago. If Xie Jingxing were to appear again, not to mention what kind of uproar it would cause in Mingqi, but if one were to add on the identity of Prince Roy, spy, all kinds of infamy would be inevitable. How dare he? Chapter 751. Princess Rong Xian trembled as she pointed at him and asked, "What did you call Ben Gong?" The purple-clad youth in the room had a tall and slender figure as he slowly reached out to touch his mask. When the mask was taken off, one was able to see his outstanding facial features. Unparalleled beauty, beautiful bones and pine trees. That pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes that always had a bit of brilliance in them were full of amorous smiles, but the smile on his lips had a hint of ridicule. As a result, his flirtatious appearance was covered up, and a bit of indifference and pride slowly appeared on his face. An unfamiliar Xie Jingxing, a young man who was completely different from that dazzling handsome youth, but one could still see the shadow of the arrogance of a youth. It was just that now that arrogance was slowly suppressed, and what replaced it was a kind of dangerous and terrifying sharpness. He put the mask back on but spoke casually and somewhat lazily, "Trust that you have been well, Aunt Rong." Princess Rong Xian was startled for a long time and seemed to have recovered from the shock just now. She looked at Xie Jingxing and sized him up with a kind of unfamiliar gaze and said in an unclear tone, "Should Ben Gong call you Prince Roy or Xie Jingxing?" The alienation and defensiveness in those words made Shen Miao unable to help but be shocked. She had also thought about what kind of scene it would be if Xie Jingxing and Princess Rong Xian really bumped into each other, but did not think that it would be like this. The familial affection in the past was a scam and a joke, but Princess Rong Xian showed such hostility in this short period of time, which was really surprising. Xie Jingxing said, "Princess can do as you please." "Did you send the medicine?" Princess Rong Xian asked. Xie Jingxing smiled but did not speak. Princess Rong Xian also smiled. Ben Gong would not dare to accept Prince Roy's things in vain. One think that the price of these medicinal herbs is not low. Later Ben Gong will let people send the money to the residence of Prince Roy. "Many thanks, Prince Roy." "No need," Xie Jingxing said. "Prince Roy came here for." Princess Rong Xian's voice was polite and vigilant. It was not like she was facing a son who had come back from the dead. That was a tone that was completely facing a stranger and could even be said to be an enemy. "She does not know anything." Xie Jingxing pointed his chin at Shen Miao and said, "If the princess has any doubts, one can directly ask me. There is no need to make things difficult for her." "How would I dare to make things difficult for her?" Princess Rong Xian sneered, but her tone was somewhat complicated. "It is good that it is not difficult." Xie Jingxing walked over and put his arm around Shen Miao's shoulders. He did not care about Shen Miao's expression and said, "Today's matter, this prince will personally visit another day to explain. If the princess has any dissatisfaction or misunderstanding towards this prince, there is no need to implicate others." His lips hooked up into a smile. "Prince Roy's residence awaits any time." Finishing, he did not care about Princess Rong Xian's reaction and walked forward a few steps and walked out the window. Shen Miao was shocked by Xie Jingxing's actions today, as she did not have any reaction when she was taken out of the princess residence. She had never thought that Xie Jingxing would dare to appear in the princess residence so brazenly. To reveal his identity to Princess Rong Xian, even though Xie Jingxing and Princess Rong Xian were like mother and son, but that was in the past. Xie Jingxing was now a great young person, and the difference in identity between countries would cause many things to change, especially when they were in such a delicate position. For example, when Princess Rong Xian saw Xie Jingxing today, Shen Miao thought that Princess Rong Xian would be hysterical and would question angrily or cry in pain. However, Princess Rong Xian's first reaction was to be on guard. Her sarcasm, quiet, probing, courteous, and did not make things difficult. With such restrained emotions, what was revealed was a fact. In front of Xie Jingxing, who had come back from the dead, Princess Rong Xian was more suspicious than happy. Princess Rong Xian's words floated in Shen Miao's ears. He seemed to be very clear about what he wanted and what he did not want from a very young age. He would not even take a glance at the things he did not want and would firmly hold on to the things he wanted from the start. He always smiled and was very likable to young ladies, but he did not have any special expression to any young lady. He was actually more indifferent than anyone else. Was it that Xie Jingxing knew from young that there would be such a day, so he attributed the kinship to the do not want part? It was not that he did not want, but that he could not afford it. Because even if he wanted it, there would be a day when he would lose it. Loved ones would become enemies and the once loving eyes would become on guard. Since it was so, it was better to be a stranger from the start. When there was no closeness, there would not be a moment of disappointment. Shen Miao's heart suddenly had a bad taste. Chapter 752. The wind at night was really cold, and Xie Jingxing only brought Shen Miao to the outside of the princess residence as the Shen family's carriage was still waiting outside. Shen Miao still wanted to speak, but Xie Jingxing's shadow had disappeared from her side. It was Mo Qing and Qi who were somewhat surprised to see her suddenly appear at the residence's doors. Qi asked, "Why did Miss come out alone? Where are the others?" Just as they were speaking, Jingzhe and Guyu ran out panting, and after seeing Shen Miao, they also gave a sigh of relief. Jingzhe said, "These servants were waiting outside. Yang Gugu said that you have come out, and this servant thought that she was lying. Later, when I saw that there was no one in the room, I came over to take a look. I didn't expect Miss to really come out." She looked left and right again and was confused. "But there is obviously only one room. We guards outside and didn't see when Miss came out. Could it be that there is a secret passage in the princess mansion?" Guyu hurriedly coughed lightly to remind her not to talk nonsense. This was after all outside the princess residence, and even if the princess residence had a secret passage, it was the princess residence's secret. How could it be spoken out so unscrupulously by them? Jingzhe stuck out her tongue and glanced at Shen Miao. Shen Miao's brows were tightly locked and her expression was somewhat grave. When Jingzhe saw it, she whispered, "Just now when one entered, Her Princess Highness' expression was not very good. Young lady, did you quarrel with Her Princess Highness?" Shen Miao shook her head. Thinking of everything that happened in the princess residence today, she felt that her head was about to explode. He climbed into the carriage and said, "Let's go back first." If there was anything, she would continue to think about it when she returned to the Shen mansion. After all, everything that happened today was really out of her expectations. Just as the horse carriage was about to set off, Shen Miao could not help but lift the curtain to look back. The darkness of the night covered everything and there was no moonlight, so nothing could be seen. She sighed softly. In a corner not far from the princess mansion, the purple-robed youth silently watched the carriage leave. Gao Yang's folding fan was no longer swaying lightly. Instead, it was folded and tucked at his waist. He looked at the handsome young man in front of him with a rare complicated expression. He asked, "Is it worth it?" "There will always be such a day," Xie Jingxing said indifferently. "Don't you feel it's a pity?" Xie Jingxing's lips curled up slightly. The mask covered his face and expression, but one could still imagine the slight ridicule, some disdain and cold expression. He said, "It's just fate." Gao Yang did not speak, and after a while, he shook his head and patted Xie Jingxing's shoulder. A few maids dressed as servants came out of the princess residence. They were holding a basket of something in their hands. They poured the contents of the basket onto the ground and threw the basket together with the basket on the ground. One of the maidservants said regretfully, "These things cost quite a lot of money. If we sell them in a medicine shop, we might be able to make some money. It's a pity to throw it away like this." "What do you know?" The maidservant at the side glared at her. "Who knows if this thing is poisonous or not? If it is, wouldn't it be troublesome to sell it? All right, stop looking. Let's go." The two maids turned around and returned to the princess residence. There was only a basket left on the ground. It was sent over by the medical hall earlier and, very coincidentally, received the medicine for Princess Rong Xian's heart disease. However, at this moment it was thrown away like a shoe and was even given the suspicion of being poisonous. Gao Yang's face was somewhat unbearable. One's heart would not be happy no matter how big one's heart was when one's efforts were wasted. He wanted to say a few words of comfort, but Xie Jingxing had already walked far away. He was dressed in brocade clothes and his figure was tall and straight as he leisurely walked in the night. His entire body was filled with an unstoppable elegance. It was just that that back view was somewhat lonely. Chapter 753. When Shen Miao returned to the Shen mansion, Shen Xian and wife were waiting for her in the residence. The sky was already dark, but Shen Miao had not returned. Thus everyone thought that something had happened. Seeing that she returned safe and sound, they were relieved. Shen Miao had something in her heart and said that she was somewhat tired and wanted to rest early. Everyone did not suspect anything. When Shen Miao returned to the bedroom, she let Jingzhe and Guyu leave and sat down in front of the table. Her heart was somewhat uneasy. Xie Jingxing appearing in the princess residence today and exposing his identity in front of Princess Rong Xian was a somewhat rash decision. Moreover, Xie Jingxing was not a rash person. Other than helping Shen Miao out of the predicament, there was no other reason to do so that Princess Rong Xian would not do anything to the Shen family. It was not what Shen Miao was willing to see for the pleasant surprise situation to become difficult because of her. One had to know that even though Xie Jingxing said that he was powerful, he did not really hurt her from the beginning to the end. Shen Miao did not know how deep the relationship between Princess Rong Xian and Xie Jingxing was, but in the princess residence, Princess Rong Xian's reaction after confirming Xie Jingxing's identity was indeed chilling. Xie Jingxing did not say anything and looked indifferent as if he did not care about it at all, but Shen Miao knew how much damage one would get from one's close ones. Just like how Fu Xiuyi treated her in the past lifetime and how the second and third household of the Shen family treated her, it was because of how cold they were when they shed all pretense of cordiality and how much they ridiculed each other when they were warm and affectionate. If it was Xie Ding's disregard or harm, Xie Jingxing could not care, but Princess Rong Xian might not. After all, Xie Jingxing's first tiger head bracelet was given to Princess Rong Xian. After all, when he returned to the Ding capital 2 years later and knew that Princess Rong Xian had a heart illness again, he would immediately send people to search for the medicine. After all, there was some friendship in it. Shen Miao stood up with some irritation and walked to the window. She opened the window and looked out. The sky outside the window seemed to be splashed with ink, and the Ding capital in the winter night revealed a bleak and desolate feeling. She thought for a while before turning around to return to the room and took out a thick crimson fur cloak from the box to cover her body. He tied the rope in front of his cloak tightly before walking to the window and calling out softly, "Song Yang." A black shadow fell down from the tree and stood straight in front of Shen Miao and said respectfully, "What instructions does young Furen have?" Shen Miao was now unable to hear Song Yang's address. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Bring me to see Xie Jingxing." Song Yang opened his mouth wide and sucked in a breath of cold air. He was born to be somewhat serious, and usually had a serious expression on his face. At this moment, his expression was somewhat comical. Shen Miao was somewhat angered by Song Yang's gaze and said, "Do you have any ideas or not?" "Young madam." Song Yang came back to his senses with a troubled expression on his face. "This subordinate doesn't know where master is right now." Shen Miao frowned. Song Yang had been keeping an eye on her in the Shen mansion, so it was indeed impossible for him to know of Xie Jingxing's whereabouts. Tonight when she came out of the princess residence, Xie Jingxing had left too quickly and she did not have the time to ask. Right now, no one really knew where Xie Jingxing was. But one did not know why. She felt that Xie Jingxing should be in the residence of Prince Roy at this moment. His emotions were hard to distinguish and he was used to hiding his emotions under a mask. Thus Shen Miao felt that if Xie Jingxing was frustrated, he would be alone. She made a prompt decision and said to Song Yang, "Bring me to the residence of Prince Roy." Song Yang revealed a troubled expression and Shen Miao frowned and asked, "You can't even do this?" Song Yang quickly explained, "This subordinate can naturally do it alone. But bringing along young Furen would not be able to do it." Chapter 754. Shen Miao asked him, "Do you know Qinggong?" Song Yang hurriedly nodded his head. "Then it is all right." Shen Miao said, "Grab me and bring me to the residence of Prince Roy." Her thoughts were very simple, just like what Xie Jingxing did to her in the past. Song Yang was after all Xie Jingxing's people and to a certain extent was more convenient to use than Mo Qing and the rest. The most important thing was that she did not want Xie Jingxing's identity to be known by more people, as it would be more dangerous for one person to know about it, even if it was a person that one trusted, because there was no telling when one would be used by others. When her words were spoken, Song Yang shook his head repeatedly and there was even some fear in his eyes. "Cannot." "What is it now?" Shen Miao's patience was about to run out. Song Yang said, "Males and females are not clear." Shen Miao, she did not know where did Xie Jingxing found these guards that were more disciplined than females. But no matter what Shen Miao said, Song Yang was not willing to bring her to the residence of Prince Rui. Shen Miao was also in a difficult situation. If she did not allow Song Yang to use his qin gong, she would have to walk out of the Shen residence's doors. The Shen residence's doors were guarded by Shen Xian's soldiers, and it was impossible not to alarm them. To leave in the middle of the night, one feared that before she could even leave the doors, everyone in the family would wake up in 2s and 3s. At that time, she would not be able to explain at all. Shen Miao had a terrible headache. She looked at the wall outside the courtyard and suddenly a light bulb went off in her mind. When Xie Jingxing just moved to Yanqing Lane, because he was not short of money to spend, he simply bought all the neighboring residences between the residence of Prince Rui and the Shen Mansion, and even glorified it as neighbors. Looking at it this way, it could be said that the residence of Prince Rui was neighbors to the Shen Mansion. It was just that the room that Xie Jingxing stayed in was a little far away. Since it was a neighbor's residence, Shen Miao's gaze landed on the high wall in the courtyard. She said, "Climb over the wall." Song Yang looked at her blankly, as if he did not believe his own ears. He was ordered to protect Shen Miao's safety and had been watching Shen Miao's every move in the Shen Mansion, so naturally he knew what kind of person Shen Miao was. Shen Miao was dignified and calm, abided by the rules, and was able to endure loneliness at such a young age. She looked like a noble that came from a faraway land. In short, even some of her small actions showed that she had a good upbringing. Song Yang often sighed in his heart that this young madam was different from others. She was born to be extremely noble. Who knew that at this moment, he would hear that this noble young madam wanted to climb over the wall? Song Yang thought that there was something wrong with his ears. Shen Miao glared at him and said without anger, "Are you unable to hear my words?" "Yes, yes, yes." Song Yang stood up straight and did not dare to look at Shen Miao's expression. The following days were enough to make Song Yang feel pain. Previously, he thought that Shen Miao wanted to climb over the wall herself, but the wall that Shen Miao mentioned was to stack things on both sides of the wall to form a staircase. Shen Miao then walked from one side of the wall to the other side. In the middle of the night, Song Yang only went to steal the haystacks that the rich people left to fertilize, but the problem was that there were more than 10 courtyards between the residence of Prince Rui and the Shen Mansion. There were walls between each courtyard, and Song Yang was so busy that he was sweating all over even on such a cold day. Seeing Shen Miao arrogantly walking past one wall after another, as if she was not walking on the wall but the high steps of the imperial palace, he sighed and at the same time complained incessantly about his fate. If it was not that he was afraid of tarnishing young madam's body and provoking master's dissatisfaction, Song Yang would not need to put in so much effort. One had to know that his qigong was not bad and it was more than enough to fly with a person, so why would he need to run around now? Previously, when master transferred him out from Mou's army, his colleagues were all envious of his good luck, but did not know that this good job was to be a coolie for others and was even worse than a manservant. Song Yang silently cried in his heart. Chapter 755. When Shen Miao flipped over the last wall and arrived at the residence of Prince Rui, Song Yang was so tired that he did not want to speak. Because they entered from the direction of the inner courtyard and did not walk through the main entrance, there was not a single guard in the huge residence of Prince Rui. Song Yang also revealed a puzzled expression. Obviously it was not that undisciplined in the past. Shen Miao was still looking at the layout of the residence of Prince Rui. It was indeed as magnificent as the rumors said. It was just a temporary place to stay, and it was actually so meticulously renovated. She did not know how extraordinary the real Great Liang's imperial palace would be. Just as she was thinking, there was an additional black-clad middle-aged male in front of her. Tai Yi. Song Yang shouted and immediately asked, "Where are the others?" The guard called Tai Yi was surprised for a moment when he saw Shen Miao and cupped his hands towards her. "Is there an important matter for young Lady Shen to visit?" Shen Miao looked at the other person's appearance and seemed to know her. Seeing that Song Yang was greeting him, she guessed that he was Xie Jingxing's people and said, I am looking for Prince Roy and have some words to say. Tai Yi seemed to know that she would say that and nodded his head. Master is in the inner courtyard. Follow me. When Ming Qi's winter was cold, no one was willing to walk around outside. If it was at night, there would be no one on the streets. Even the birds, cats and dogs would curl up in their warm nests and were not willing to move at all. The water in the pond had already frozen. The thick ice had completely covered the scenery inside. The entire garden was filled with lotuses and koi swimming in the wind, but it was a vast expanse of whiteness. It seemed that no matter how good the day was, there would be a moment when it would pass, just like how the flowers that bloomed in spring would one day wither. The purple-clad youth was lazily sleeping on the tree with his hands supporting his head. He did not take off the mask on his face and there was a lantern hanging on the tree. Under the faint halo, his expression could not be said to be desolate nor happy, but there was some slight loneliness. Like the wind passing through the trees, it was light, but also cold. Quiet and silent. Under the tree, the white tiger lay down. From time to time, it would use its claws to scratch the tree trunk. Occasionally, it would use its mouth to bite the icicles that had fallen on the ground. The crunching sounds of its bite could be heard clearly in the night. When Shen Miao came in, this was the scene that entered her eyes. The youth and the white tiger were sleeping, but it made her think of herself in her previous lifetime. Walking through the imperial garden in the middle of the night in the palace, her eyes seemed to be filled with the laughter of Fu Xiu and Mei Furen in the day. It was somewhat bitter as she walked endlessly. When the white tiger suddenly saw that someone was coming, it immediately stood up and looked at her warily with its body arched. It let out a low warning howl, but because it was too small, it didn't seem threatening at all. The sound it made was also hulu hulu, which was quite cute. Shu, jiao jiao. Xia Jingxing said, be quiet. Shen Miao, she walked under the tree and raised her head to look at the person sleeping in the thicket. Who are you calling? Xia Jing's actions paused and suddenly lowered his head. When he saw Shen Miao, he was surprised and asked, why are you here? The words in the princess residence were not finished, so one came over to take a look. Xia Jingxing swept a glance at her and did not come down from the tree. Instead he laughed softly, you came because you are concerned about me? What you think is your business? Shen Miao answered. Could it be that you think that I will be sad? Xia Jingxing seemed to have heard a joke and his expression became more interesting, really naive. It is best that there is none. Shen Miao did not care about his somewhat mocking words and spoke calmly. Xia Jingxing stared at the sky and lazily waved his hands, you go back. I am fine. Chapter 756. Shen Miao did not go back. That white tiger on the ground seemed to have sensed that Shen Miao did not have any ill intentions and moreover its master did not show any hostility, so it gradually relaxed its vigilance and snuggled up to Shen Miao's feet, making hulu hoot sounds. Shen Miao quietly looked at the youth on the tree. After a long while, she asked, Xia Jingxing, do you want to destroy Ming Qi? The air quietened down in a moment, and there seemed to be a small, lingering light that leaked out from the lantern. The dim light and the branches covered the youth's expression, and even if one could see it, one could not see his expression clearly with the mask. One could only see a corner of the gorgeous purple robe hanging down, and the golden embroidered pattern was shining brightly under the light. Those silk threads crisscrossed, but vaguely outlined a picture of an auspicious beast. It seemed to be a dragon. The silence was frightening as he did not answer. The white tiger whimpered softly before turning and running back into the bushes. Shen Miao leaned against the tree and lightly said, if at the end you only want to destroy Ming Qi, then everyone in the middle can be chosen. Different paths do not work together. Some people are very good but are destined to not be on the same path. If one is not on the same path, then who cares what he does? Xia Jingxing laughed and his voice was heard from above, are you comforting me? No. I am comforting myself. Shen Miao answered. She could understand Xia Jingxing as she and Xia Jingxing were somewhat different. Xia Jingxing was a man and moreover he was more decisive in killing. One believed that after tonight, she would still be that victorious Prince Rui. Nothing would be difficult for him and nothing would be able to stop his footsteps. He was like a lion and was an extremely powerful existence. It was just that when he was licking his wounds alone, she coincidentally bumped into him. Do you also have sad matters? Xia Jingxing teased. It was still a cynical tone, but Shen Miao knew that there was no smile in his eyes at the moment. It was because there were some emotions that even he himself was unable to conceal. That was why he went up to the tree where no one could see and was not even willing to take off his mask and sit quietly. My sad matters are no less than yours. Shen Miao smiled gently. At least Princess Rong Xian is still alive. The most painful thing in the world should not be that the person who was misunderstood and blamed is no longer around. Some mistakes can be compensated for, and some cannot. Just like her Wan Yu and Fu Ming, she could save many people, but only these two could not be saved. In this lifetime, even if she exhausted her entire life, she could not save them. Regardless of whether she was able to take revenge in the future, or whether she could live a prosperous life with the Shen family, there would never be a chance to make up for this regret. She could only chew it over and over at night. Even entering their dreams was an extravagant hope. You also know that this day will come sooner or later, so why worry so much? Doing one's best and knowing heaven's will, one have done one's utmost benevolence and duty. No matter how excessive the rest are, it is only fate that has reached the end. Shen Miao said, no one is to walk the same path with anyone for a lifetime. For example, my marriage. Fu Xiaoyi and I are not on the same path, the Crown Prince is not on the same path as me, Huang Fuhao is not, Feng Zixian is not, Luo Ling is not and Pei Lang is not. Fu Xiaoyi and the Crown Prince were part of the Fu family, so naturally they were enemies and it was impossible for them to be together with Shen Miao. Huang Fuhao had ulterior motives and Feng Zixian grew up with the wind and current. The flowers that were raised in the greenhouse were different from her bones. Luo Ling's character was upright, so how could he understand the dark schemes in her heart? As for Pei Lang, he had complicated entanglements. In the previous lifetime, he had also heavily added a stroke in Shen Miao's life, and this stroke made her and Pei Lang forever separated by something, making it impossible for them to treat each other honestly. Chapter 757. If you say it like this, then there is no one in this world that is with you. Xia Jingxing reminded. That is the truth. Shen Miao silently sighed in her heart. A person who climbed up from the grave and lived a second time, in some aspects, should be similar to a ghost. She had always been walking alone on the road of revenge. Then comforting me like this would give me an illusion. Xia Jingxing gently smiled, you are with me. The wind picked up the leaves on the ground and blew across the lake. The surface of the lake was as hard as a rock and could not be moved. But one could vaguely see the spring breeze blowing across the surface of the lake, the ripples of the water, the sparkling spring water, and the beautiful scene of red flowers and green willows. Winter will pass, and spring will come. Shen Miao's voice was very light, even lighter than the night wind, as it scattered in the air. She said, who says it is not? If you comfort me like this, it will give me the illusion that you are on the same side as me. Who says it is not? A shadow flashed in front of the tree and someone came down from it. The youth's back was tall and handsome. When the white tiger saw its master coming down, it immediately ran over in joy and intimately rubbed against the corner of the other's robes. Do you think that I am the great Liang's Prince Rui or the Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Linan? He asked. Shen Miao leaned against the tree with her hands behind her back and looked at his back view. Is this very important? I also thought that it was not important. Xia Jingxing stood by the pond and his voice was calm, as if there was no fluctuation at all as he calmly narrated. From the moment I knew my identity, someone kept reminding me that this is very important. The Marquis of Linan is weak and incompetent, indecisive and not fit to be a father. Even if the real little Marquis Xie did not die prematurely, he would still die in Madame Fang's hands. Aunt Rong treated me very well. I thought that it was important to others, but to her, my identity was not important. But now it seems that I made a big mistake. He lightly said, to the people of the world, this question is important from the beginning to the end. There is no fluke. One thought that some feelings could break through the shackles of identity and family could be above everything, but in the end it was no less than a fierce slap on one's face. Most importantly, it should be that deep sense of disappointment. Shen Miao stared at his back and said after a long time, "It is not important to me." Xie Jingxing laughed softly. He turned and walked towards Shen Miao and stopped in front of Shen Miao. He looked down at Shen Miao from above and asked, "Do you know who I am?" "You are only Xie Jingxing." She did not want to admit defeat and raised her head as if she wanted to suppress the other's imposing manner. "Only?" He was slightly displeased. "You can deceive others but not me." Shen Miao looked at his mask. "I knew what kind of person you were from the beginning. From the moment I met you to the end of the alliance, you are only Xie Jingxing, nothing more." Xie Jingxing made a meaningful "oh" sound. He took another step forward and Shen Miao subconsciously retreated. She was originally leaning against the tree and now with her back against the tree, there was no way to retreat but Xie Jingxing lifted her chin. Xie Jingxing said, "Do you think that I am very cruel?" "Do not think so. I am also the same." Shen Miao answered. "Then do you know that I am not a good person?" His voice was low and pleasant to listen to, and in the night when the cold wind blew into one's ears, it made one's body feel hot. Shen Miao shrank back again but was not willing to be looked down upon and only said, "No. I am also the same." Xie Jingxing held her waist and pulled Shen Miao towards him. The mask blocked his face and made his handsomeness have a trace of bewitching mystery. He said, "Then I can answer your question now." "What question?" Shen Miao was puzzled. "You asked me if I want to destroy Ming Qi." Shen Miao stared at him. That pair of beautiful eyes were full of bright lights that were so deep that one could be sucked in. "Then what is your answer?" she asked. "If I say yes, will you report me?" Xie Jingxing smiled evilly. Shen Miao slowly said, "Will not. Because I am also the same." Just one sentence, 3, I am also the same, but it made Xie Jingxing's gaze change. It was like a cluster of sparks blooming in the cold icy plains. One could not tell whether he was happy or angry as he only asked, "Do you know what you are saying?" Shen Miao was silent. He gritted his teeth as if he wanted to swallow Shen Miao whole. He said, "Shen Miao, do not regret it. Once you board my boat, do not leave in this lifetime." He suddenly leaned over and kissed Shen Miao. Shen Miao subconsciously wanted to dodge, but Xie Jingxing grabbed her waist and pulled her into his embrace. His cold mask touched Shen Miao's face and imprisoned Shen Miao's hands as he roughly kissed her lips. Chapter 758. 175. His kiss was hot but the silver mask was cold, as if it was carrying some kind of indescribable emotion that covered the sky and earth. The more Shen Miao struggled, the more firmly he imprisoned her. He locked her in his embrace and used a kind of vowed gesture to possess her lips. The flowers that bloomed in the winter, the butterflies that fluttered in the autumn, the ice spring in the summer and the snowflakes in the spring were all unable to describe the strangeness of this moment. There was the whistling sound of the wind beside her ears, but that beautiful youth's embrace was strong and the kiss was scorching hot, as if she was unable to escape even if she tried her entire life. When Xie Jingxing released Shen Miao almost went limp and was almost unable to breathe. In her previous life, she admired Fu Xiuyi, but from the beginning to the end, she was hot-headed. On Fu Xiuyi's wedding day, the bridal chamber was just a perfunctory gesture. She had never been so intimate with a male before. Feeling that she had lost her composure, Shen Miao flew into a rage out of humiliation and glared at Xia Jingxing as he supported her to prevent her from falling. But she did not know that she had just been kissed. Her pair of eyes were so moist that they were almost overflowing with water. Her face was flushed red and her red lips were like flower petals, but it made one want to love her even more. Xia Jingxing moved his gaze away to hide it. Other than feeling embarrassed and angry, Shen Miao was also at a loss. In all fairness, she had more or less expected it to be like this. As for why she did not stop it or let it develop, it was because she followed her heart and made a subconscious reaction. Shen Miao did not want to delve into the reason. Tell me about your marriage. Xia Jingxing resumed his cynical tone and said, what are your plans now? Shen Miao looked at him inexplicably, what plans? Xia Jingxing narrowed his eyes at her and his tone was somewhat dangerous. The Crown Prince, Luo Ling, Feng Zixian, Su Ming Feng, Pei Lang. Who do you want to marry? Shen Miao frowned and pretended to think seriously. Xia Jingxing's eyes narrowed and said in an unfriendly tone, you really want to marry someone else? Why can't I want to marry someone else? Kissed me, touched me and dared to wear a green hat on me. Shen Miao, your courage is not small. Shen Miao smiled gently. Could it be that you want me to marry you? You are finally smart for once. Xia Jingxing leisurely said. Shen Miao was surprised for a moment. It was not that she did not think about the relationship between her and Xia Jingxing. The two of them said that they were allies, but in the end, their relationship was even more ambiguous than that. When it comes to the matters between men and women, even if you haven't eaten pork, you've seen pigs run. Shen Miao was also aware of some things from the same heartbeats in those nights. But this did not mean that Xia Jingxing could marry her. Xia Jingxing was Prince Rui of the Great Liang and she was the daughter of the Ming Qi's general. Not to mention if Ming Qi's side would agree, one feared that it would not be easy to explain to Emperor Yonglu. Especially looking at the current situation, Xia Jingxing seemed to have a very high position in the Great Liang. The more power he grasped, it meant that Emperor Yonglu valued Xia Jingxing more. A courtier who was valued by the emperor had many things that were beyond his control, including his own marriage. When Shen Miao was still distracted, she heard Xia Jingxing speaking again, you do not need to worry about anything. Just obediently stay in the room to embroider the dowry and wait for me. When did I agree to marry you? Shen Miao asked. Oh. Xia Jingxing pondered for a moment before his lips hooked up into a smile. He said, I also do not mind cooking the uncooked rice tonight. Shen Miao looked at him vigilantly but Xia Jingxing smiled and said, you look like you are looking forward to it. Shen Miao decided that she could not continue talking to Xia Jingxing like this anymore. This person was bad to the bones and could not even speak properly with 3 sentences of teasing. She said, I have a solution for the Crown Prince's matter. Chapter 759. Xia Jingxing raised his eyebrows. You already have a countermeasure? I suddenly thought of it. Shen Miao emphasized, need your help. Need my help? Xia Jingxing smiled gently and whispered as he looked at her, your husband will help you. Shen Miao. When Shen Miao returned to the Shen mansion from the residence of Prince Rui, it was almost dawn. When they returned, it was naturally Xia Jingxing who brought her back. When he knew that Shen Miao came over by climbing over the wall, Xia Jingxing's smile almost made Shen Miao angry. But after this night, many things quietly changed. Shen Miao had a strange feeling when she was discussing with Xia Jingxing about the countermeasure to the Crown Prince's marriage. She had always been alone on the path of revenge. Now that there was an inexplicable strong enough reliance behind her, it made her feel at ease. Especially that this reliance was rather smart as he was able to see the loopholes in the countermeasure that she proposed and was able to propose improvements. Shen Miao felt that their partnership was very compatible. Unknowingly, the words that Xia Jingxing said that night floated in Shen Miao's mind. To let her embroider the dowry obediently. Xie Jingxing was a person who looked indifferent on certain matters, but Princess Rong Xian's words were right. He knew what he wanted and what he did not want from the start. Shen Miao was also not clear how much of Xie Jingxing's words were true. But on the matter of Shen Miao's marriage, Xie Jingxing displayed an absolute strength and overbearingness that made others have no room to refute. Shen Miao sighed. The road ahead was long and the muddy waters of Ming Qi had not been cleared, thus it was too extravagant to mention about feelings. If Xie Jingxing really had that ability and dared to marry the daughter of another country's general, then there was nothing that she would not dare to marry. Because Shen Miao reached out and touched her heart. One did not know if there would be another person in this world who could make her heart beat again. Her lips were tingling as if there was still a residual heat that made her lower her head. Undeniable duplicity and unsuppressible heartbeat. The young man was handsome and beautiful. He was decisive, wise, and calm in killing. It was difficult to not be tempted. In the residence of Prince Ding, it was brightly lit that night. When Fu Xiuyi found out that the marriage between Shen Miao and the crown prince was suppressed, it was because of Prince Roy's unintentional words. That night, all the advisors were called to the residence of Prince Ding to discuss the matter from beginning to end. I had previously guessed that the relationship between Shen Miao and Prince Roy was not that simple. Now testing it on the crown prince, indeed the horse's feet were exposed. Fu Xiuyi sneered, once Shen Miao makes a move, Prince Roy would not be able to sit still. Pei Lang stood below with his head lowered and did not say a word. These days, Fu Xiuyi had changed his previous regard for him and no longer asked for his opinion on many matters. The contrast was too big and naturally fell into the eyes of the other advisors. They thought that Pei Lang had offended Fu Xiuyi and were rejoicing in his misfortune, but Pei Lang knew that for such an intelligent person like Fu Xiuyi to inexplicably give him the cold shoulder, he must have found some clues. Perhaps his relationship with Shen Miao had already been detected by Fu Xiuyi. Although he was burning with anxiety, Pei Lang could not show it at all. Fu Xiuyi had not shed all pretense of cordiality, so he must have his own intentions. Perhaps it was only a suspicion that had not been confirmed. To put up a show, one must complete it and not give up halfway. Pei Lang was deeply aware of this logic and the reaction he showed was that of an ordinary advisor who was given the cold shoulder. What is Gentleman Pei's opinion? Today for the first time, Fu Xiuyi asked for his opinion. Pei Lang's heart jumped and he lowered his head. This subordinate thinks that one should immediately investigate the relationship between the Shen family and Prince Roy or the Great Liang. Shen Miao's identity is special and represents the most important military power in Ming Qi. If the Shen family and Prince Roy had reached an agreement privately, one fear. Chapter 760. The advisors started to discuss. Even though they were dissatisfied with Pei Lang, they had to admit that Pei Lang's words were not wrong. Shen Miao was after all a young lady and not a great beauty that could cause the downfall of a country. Rather than saying that Prince Roy flew into a rage because of a beauty, it would be more reasonable to say that Prince Roy valued the Shen family behind Shen Miao. Fu Xiuyi said, "Gentleman's words are correct, but I heard about one thing today." Everyone waited for him to say the rest of the words. Shen Miao stayed in Princess Rong Xian's residence for a day. The princess's health was not good but she was left alone till night. Moreover, it seemed that after Shen Miao left, the princess did not seem to be in a good mood. Fu Xiuyi smiled. Could it be that the princess also knows something? After a moment of silence, one of the advisors said, "Perhaps Princess Rong Xian knows some inside information. Your Highness might as well start from Princess Rong Xian's side. Perhaps you can find some clues." "I also think so." Fu Xiuyi looked at Pei Lang and one did not know if he was deliberately saying it for him to hear. Even though Shen Miao has the backing of the Shen family, she herself is also very strange. Prince Roy only helped her in every matter, so there must be some hidden reasons. If Princess Rong Xian is also involved, then things would become interesting. Paper cannot wrap fire. I must uncover the secret between them. Fu Xiu smiled meaningfully. One still have to rely on everyone. Everyone continuously said that they did not dare. Pei Lang lowered his head, but a trace of uneasiness flashed past his heart. That night, there was no peace in the princess residence. Princess Rong Xian sat in the Xingji courtyard for an entire night. Xia Jingxing did not die and instead became the Great Liang's Prince Rui. This was something that Princess Rong Xian had never thought of. In the past 2 years, Princess Rong Xian had countless times hoped that one day she would discover that Xia Jingxing's death was just a dream. She hoped that when she woke up, that arrogant and handsome youth would still be standing in front of her and lazily call her Aunt Rong. However, when this moment really came, the first thought that came to Princess Rong Xian's mind was not gratification. He was wearing a noble purple gold robe, and the corners of the robe could be embroidered with a flying dragon with golden thread. He wore a cold mask and greeted her familiarly, but he had the title of Prince Rui on his head. That was the biggest threat from Ming Qi. Princess Rong Xian was initially angry at being concealed, but when she realized Xia Jingxing's identity, Princess Rong Xian's most instinctive reaction was to be vigilant. This did not mean that she did not love Xia Jingxing or that all those years of companionship were fake. It was because she was the princess of the Great Liang, and the arrogance and paranoia of the imperial family would always appear at this time. She was writing a letter in front of the table, and it was an obscure reminder to Emperor Wenhui. After writing halfway, she suddenly stopped and tore the paper in front of her into pieces. The entanglement and complexity in her heart could not be expressed in words, but she was not willing to see Xia Jingxing again because she was afraid that she did not dare to face him. And what made Princess Rong Xian most suspicious was that it was fine if Xia Jingxing did not die, but how did he become the younger brother of the Great Liang's Emperor Yonglu, Prince Rui? The title of Prince Rui was obviously not something that could be casually used by others. Was Xia Jingxing originally a Great Liang's person, or was he bought by the Great Liang's people by chance? If it was the former, then it was pardonable, but if it was the latter, then Xia Jingxing was a living traitor to the country. Xia Ding and Xia Jingxing were not close, so it was not possible to ask Xia Ding. Shen Miao must know something, but Shen Miao would definitely not say it. Xia Jingxing was also protecting her, thus it was not easy for Princess Rong Xian to move. After thinking about it, Princess Rong Xian finally thought of a person. Chapter 761. She and Xia Jingxing had grown up together since childhood, and the relationship between the two families was not shallow, and could be considered as Xia Jingxing's best friend in Ming Qi. Because they grew up together, they were always together, so there was always time to see Xia Jingxing's different places. The heir of the Count of Ping Nan, Su Ming Feng. Princess Rong Xian called a servant to bring the invitation over. The days were getting closer to the end of the year. The commoners were busy preparing for the new year, and the streets and alleys were bustling with activity every day. Life was always so smooth that ordinary people would not be able to think of what the high-ranking people were thinking about. Just like how goshawks and sparrows saw the sky, they were destined to be different. Ever since Emperor Wenhui was shocked by Prince Rui's ambitious idle talk, he had more and more thoughts of forming an alliance with the Qin country. It was just that the real reason for Princess Ming An's case had not been ascertained. Until now there was still a line separating them. But as Emperor Wenhui showed more and more sincerity, Huang Fu Hao's attitude also loosened. The Ming Qi's government officials were at Huang Fu Hao's disposal, and even the Supreme Court of Justice had to accept Huang Fu Hao's questioning from time to time. No matter what the final result was, Emperor Wenhui had indeed given Huang Fu Hao enough face. Until now, the cause of Princess Ming An's death was not found, and Huang Fu Hao thought that it was not that Ming Qi was deliberately covering it up. After all, he had personally seen the progress of the case. Perhaps Princess Ming An had offended an important person, otherwise how could there be no trace left at all? Not mentioning about Princess Ming An's matter, the words that Prince Rui said to Emperor Wenhui finally reached Huang Fu Hao's ears. If one were to say that Huang Fu Hao represented the Qin country at the beginning and had the intention to form an alliance with the Ming Qi, but deliberately put on airs in an attempt to seek more benefits for himself, then when he heard Prince Roy's words, Huang Fu Hao could not sit still. If Prince Roy represented the Great Liang and really wanted to take over the few cities that produced ores in the Ming Qi, then as Emperor Wen Hui was worried, the Great Liang's ambition was not just a few cities, but the Ding capital and even the entire Ming Qi, then the Ming Qi would be in danger. Without the lips, the teeth would be cold, and a single Qin country would not be a match for a large number of people, not to mention that after absorbing the Ming Qi's troops, weapons and wealth to the Great Liang, it would be even more unstoppable. At that time when the Great Liang would come to clean up the Qin country would not be able to turn the situation around. The purpose of the alliance between the Qin country and Ming Qi was only to contain the Great Liang. Huang Fu Hao passed the news back to the Qin country. Even though the Qin emperor was angry that he had lost a princess in Ming Qi, but a princess was insignificant compared to the entire Qin country. The Qin emperor only let Huang Fu Hao temporarily suppress the matter of Princess Ming'an, and must form an alliance with the Ming Qi. After Huang Fu Hao received the news from the Qin country's emperor, he ran to the Ming Qi's palace more frequently these days. One had the intention to form an alliance and the other was worried that he did not have any helpers. They hit it off and on the surface they were happy and harmonious, thus the relationship between Emperor Wen Hui and Huang Fu Hao was much closer. Emperor Wen Hui had the intention to support the crown prince and previously wanted to marry Shen Miao to the crown prince, but who knew that he would suddenly peak at the Great Liang's ambition and did not dare to take action against the Shen family. Now that Huang Fu Hao had come over, it was just right for Huang Fu Hao to interact with the crown prince more and let Huang Fu Hao owe the crown prince a favor. Everything in this world was naturally linked in countless ways. Relationships that usually seemed to have nothing to do with each other were intertwined with each other through all sorts of intertwining and weaving. Intelligent people were good at finding places that they could use in these relationships, but if an ordinary person was not careful, they would be lost in all sorts of intertwining. In the residence of the Minister of Land, Shen Dongling was drinking tea. Good quality yi grew on the dangerous peaks of the southern country, and a small pinch was worth a few hundred taels of silver. Her posture while sipping tea was graceful and cozy. She was wearing a cotton jacket embroidered with Jiangnan embroidery. She was also very pretty and delicate. At first glance, one could tell that she was a charming young married woman who lived like a prince. Chapter 762. But who would have thought that not long ago, she was still an unknown Shu daughter in the Shen residence. She did not leave the courtyard all year round and the servants did not recognize that she was a young lady of the Shen residence. Not to mention that when Ren Wanyun was the head of the household, there was not a single sight of meat or oil in the meals for 10 days to half a month. The past and present were like the difference between clouds and mud. People walk towards higher places while water flows downwards. Even though this residence of the Minister of Land was not as powerful as other official families, it was considered to be overflowing with wealth. There had never been anyone who relied on the salary of the imperial court to live. Before marrying into the residence of the Minister of Land, Shen Dongling had always thought that the Wang family followed Prince Zhou, but after that she found out that the real master of the Wang family was the crown prince. As a Minister of Land, the family actually had such a rich family property. It was because the Wang family had some dealings with the salt smugglers, and the money naturally flowed into the residence of the crown prince. But even if the goose's feathers were plucked, the little bit of goose's feathers that were deducted was enough for the family to spend money in the Ding capital. There was no need to think too much, as one had to know that the salt smugglers were a profitable business with little capital. If one were to say that the matter of money was already Shen Dongling's surprise, then Wang Bai himself made Shen Dongling extremely satisfied. Wang Bai looked honest but was actually shrewd and could be considered as one of the great generals under the crown prince. In the beginning Shen Yu looked down on Wang Bai, but did not know that it was because she had eyes but could not see. Shen Dongling was born pretty and her temperament was even softer. The most important thing was that she would always give some suggestions on Wang Bai's matters. But she never interfered excessively and cautiously kept a distance. The more it was like this, the better Wang Bai treated her. To marry a wife, one must marry a virtuous one, especially when this wife was not only virtuous and intelligent, but also charming and considerate, which was even more valuable. Wang Bai had always been glad that Shen Dongling and Shen Yu exchanged marriage at that time. In the Minister of Land's family, Wang Bai was the only son and Wang Bai was also very capable, thus Wang Bai was the one in charge of the Wang family. Naturally, Shen Dongling became the matriarch of the Wang family. The servants all respected her, and if Ren Wanyun was still alive, she would be so angry that she would fall down. That Shu daughter that she regarded as an aunt was now living a more comfortable life than Ren Wanyun, and Wan Yinyang naturally rose with the tide and lived a wealthy life. It was the same today. Wang Bai returned from outside and handed the pastries in his hands to the servant girl. I passed by Guangfu Zhai and bought your favorite cloud cake on the way. Thank you, my husband. Shen Dongling poured tea for him with a smile. Her every move revealed a soft and boneless feeling. Most likely it was because she was the daughter of Wan Yinyang that she had some special amorous feelings in her bones. She smiled and said, "My husband is very happy today." Did something good happen? Wang Bai didn't hide most of his matters from Shen Dongling because Shen Dongling wasn't a talkative person. She would occasionally share his worries. Now that Wang Bai and Shen Dongling had just gotten married, they were in a sweet relationship. Wang Bai said, "His Majesty wants Huang Fuhao to have more contact with the Crown Prince. Most likely he wants to establish good relations with Qin." His Majesty had given such a favor to the Crown Prince. It was obvious that he wanted to support the Crown Prince. When a person achieves Tao, his chickens and dogs will also ascend to heaven. Since we are the Crown Prince's people, when the Crown Prince inherits the throne in the future, he will only give us a share of credit. He smiled as he looked at Shen Dongling. Do you think that there should be a celebration? Shen Dongling's thoughts turned for a moment, but immediately a surprised smile bloomed on her face. Really? Finishing, she looked at Wang Bai with some adoration and softly said, "Husband is really powerful." It is really the good fortune that this concubine had cultivated in her previous life to be able to follow husband. Any man's vanity would be greatly satisfied to be looked at by such an enchanting woman with such a worshipful gaze. Wang Bai smiled. Is this easily satisfied? He sighed and said regretfully, if His Majesty had bestowed 5th Shen young lady's marriage to His Highness the Crown Prince would have the support of the Shen family's military and it would be more advantageous. Our chances of winning would be higher. Even though there is a temporary friendship with the Qin country, but in terms of military. He sighed, strength is often the most important. Chapter 763. Shen Dongling's thoughts turned and she snuggled into Wang Bai's embrace. She reached out to touch Wang Bai's chest and said softly, "Husband is just too harsh on yourself. To be able to do all these, one is no longer an ordinary person." This was what Wang Bai wanted to hear. He smiled, "You are really content. This concubine is content to have a male-like husband." Shen Dongling smiled tenderly and asked unintentionally, "Now one cannot let 5th younger sister marry the Crown Prince?" 5th younger sister? Wang Bai was surprised for a moment before saying, "Almost forgot that you are sisters." His unintentional words were exceptionally harsh to Shen Dongling's ears. It was as if he was saying that she was a Shu daughter and Shen Miao was a Di daughter and there was a difference between Di and Shu. One's greed would grow with the change of environment. In the past, Shen Dongling had to be busy protecting herself in the Shen residence and find a way for herself to survive. Thus she could endure those ridicule and sarcasm and did not have the time to bother about it. However, when she became the Furin of the Minister of Land, she became especially sensitive to these things. She buried her head in Wang Bai's embrace and did not let Wang Bai see her somewhat hazy expression at the moment but asked, "Is it not possible?" "It is not that it is not possible." Wang Bai said, "It is just that it is difficult to see the great Liang's ambitions and other matters will be delayed. One still needs Shen Xian's prestige. It is just that Shen Miao is not young anymore, and one heard that the Shen family does not wish for Shen Miao to marry into the residence of the crown prince. The key point of this matter is to complete it as soon as possible. If it is dragged on for too long, it would be hard to avoid changes. Shen Xian would find a marriage for Shen Miao, and there is a high possibility that Shen Miao would be married off. At that time, the crown prince's plans would fall through. Cannot the marriage be settled first? Shen Dongling asked. Fool. Wang Bai said, Shen Miao herself is also not willing to marry the crown prince. If one were to use extreme means, it would not be good to make Shen Xian dissatisfied at this time. Isn't this bullying others with one's own power? Shen Dongling's lips twitched. However, her words did not even have the slightest thought for Shen Miao and treated those bandits who disregarded the wishes of others and imposed their demands on others as people who were wronged. It can be said that. Wang Bai said with a smile. Then why are they allowed to use their power to bully others, but not the crown prince? Wang Bai smiled. The crown prince is a virtuous man. He cannot do such a thing. The crown prince can't do such a thing, but someone else can. For example, ordinary people. If everyone in the world wants fifth sister to marry the crown prince, wouldn't this be considered as using the power of the common people to bully others? Wang Bai originally thought that Shen Dongling was speaking in a fit of pique, but who knew that when she heard the latter part, her expression gradually became serious. He looked at Shen Dongling. Shen Dongling sat in his arms, looking adorable and innocent, as if she had just said it casually. But Wang Bai was a smart person. He could find some details from Shen Dongling's words. He asked, "Don't tell me you have another bad idea? Tell me about it. My husband is really cunning. What's in it for me?" Shen Dongling asked. Yes. Wang Bai pretended to think for a moment and said, "If you say it well, then I will think of a way to ask for a title of nobility for you." He thought that if Shen Dongling really had a way to let Shen Miao marry the crown prince, then he would have made a great contribution. Even if the crown prince ascended to the throne in the future, he would still remember his kindness. It was not a loss to ask for a title of nobility for Shen Dongling. When Shen Dongling heard it, a trace of satisfaction flashed in her eyes. She said, "I am not doing it for the title of a foreign, but for you, my husband. Whatever my husband wants to do, this concubine will naturally support it. If my husband wants to assist the future ruler, then this concubine, can only show her incompetence." She said wittily, which made Wang Bai's heart happy. Actually, this method is very simple. As long as the crown prince of the Qin country cooperates, it will be fine. She said. Chapter 764. This method is very simple. As long as the crown prince of the Qin kingdom cooperates, it will be fine. Shen Dongling said. When Wang Bai heard this, he asked, "What do you mean?" Shen Dongling smiled. Currently our Ming Qi is not about to form an alliance with the great Liang. According to my husband's words, the Qin state must be happy to form an alliance with us. What if the condition of the Qin kingdom's alliance is to marry the fifth sister? That's naturally not possible. Even if His Majesty had no choice but to agree for the sake of the commoners, General Shen would not agree to marry fifth Shen young lady far away. Wang Bai was very clear that everyone in the entire Ding capital knew that Shen Xian doted on his daughter Shen Miao. It was already impossible for her to marry out of the country, not to mention to a faraway place like the Qin state. Not even once in a few years. Shen Dongling smiled. It is precisely this logic, but if this news were to spread out and the commoners of Ming Qi know of this matter, they would definitely request General Shen to marry fifth younger sister over. After all, Huang Fu Hao was the crown prince of the Qin kingdom, and his looks were not bad. It would not be a loss for fifth sister to marry him. If eldest Bo did not agree and the Qin country would not form an alliance with Ming Qi, perhaps the great Liang would take advantage of the loophole and the Ming Qi would be in danger. 1/5 sister in exchange for the safety of the common people. Regardless of whether it's worth it in eldest uncle's eyes, it's worth it in the eyes of the common people. Wang Bai fell into deep thought. Shen Dongling continued, everyone knows that my first uncle puts the righteousness of the world above his own life. Now, he is being threatened by the common people. He can risk his life against the government, but he cannot disregard the wishes of the common people. Even His Majesty cannot act recklessly. He has to consider the wishes of the people. Not to mention my uncle. On one hand, eldest uncle did not want the great Liang to have an opportunity to take advantage of. On the other hand, he would definitely not allow 5th younger sister to marry far away. But who could stop Huang Fuhao? Even if they did, they might not dare to do so. At this time, as long as His Royal Highness the Crown Prince comes forward and says that 5th younger sister has already been selected by the Crown Prince's residence, everything will be easily solved. This. Wang Bai was a little hesitant. Shen Dongling continued to smile and said, Huang Fuhao cannot ignore the Crown Prince's face. Moreover, there were indeed rumors of this matter a few days ago. Huang Fuhao only needed to ask around and he would be able to find out. Compared to marrying Huang Fuhao and living far away in Qin, first uncle was naturally more willing for 5th younger sister to marry into the Crown Prince's residence, where he could look after her from time to time. The Crown Prince stepped forward bravely at this critical juncture. Eldest uncle will be grateful for the Crown Prince's kindness. Wang Bai's eyes lit up. He was astute to begin with, so he naturally discerned the merits of Shen Dongling's method, and he fell into deep contemplation. Shen Dongling did not finish her words. She wrapped one arm around Wang Bai's neck and said, but this play naturally needs Huang Fuhao and His Highness the Crown Prince to cooperate. Your Highness the Crown Prince can give Huang Fuhao some benefits, and Huang Fuhao will get it. Let's put on a show together, and let nature take its course. Wang Bai hugged Shen Dongling tightly and kissed her on the cheek. I never thought that I would marry a think tank. Shen Dongling lowered her head in shame. Don't tease me, my husband. I just thought of it suddenly. There must be many inappropriate parts, but my husband will definitely think of a way to make up for it. It is already not easy for you to think of all these. The more Wang Bai looked at Shen Dongling, the happier he felt. This time you have helped me a lot. Rest assured, when the matter is completed, I will definitely mention your contribution in front of the Crown Prince, and let our Ling to be awe-inspiring. Shen Dongling's heart was filled with disdain. When a man established a career, what they were most afraid of was that the credit would be shared by others, not to mention that she was a female. It would be strange if Wang Bai would mention her contribution, and it was just flowery words at this moment. Chapter 765. However, understanding was one thing, but Shen Dongling still pushed Wang Bai away and said anxiously, my husband, please don't mention that this was concubine's idea. Who would scheme against his own sister for no reason? If it wasn't for helping my husband solve his problems today, I wouldn't have ended up like this. If these words were to spread, how would I be able to face others in the future? Wang Bai was just casually saying it, and if Shen Dongling were to accept it, he would feel that she was too greedy for credit, but at this moment Shen Dongling's flustered rejection made him feel extremely satisfied. The more he looked at Shen Dongling, the more adorable she was, and the more glad he was that Shen Dongling and Shen Yu had exchanged marriage. He said, fine, 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 I won't say any more. But this was not a bad thing. Marrying the Crown Prince, and in the future when the Crown Prince ascends to the throne, 5th Shen young lady would be the noble consort, and in the future she would thank you. This is a good thing that you can't get even if you beg for it. Shen Dongling smiled and said, this concubine thinks so too. But in her heart she knew that Shen Miao was not a person who coveted power, and the Shen family had already regarded Shen Miao as the pearl in their palms, so those riches and honor were not important to her. From some aspects, Shen Miao was the same as Shen Xian, with a kind of stubbornness in their bones. For others, marrying the Crown Prince was a good thing. Even if they didn't want it before, they would be satisfied after a few days. But Shen Miao was different. If she took a wrong step, she could kill herself. Even if he didn't show it on the surface, he definitely wouldn't feel good in his heart. Sorry, Shen Dongling said in her heart. In the entire Shenshen residence, the person she was most unwilling to be enemies with was Shen Miao, because Shen Miao was also very dangerous and had the unconditional support of Shen Xian and wife. However, the present was different from the past. Now that Shen Dongling had the qualifications to go against Shen Miao, Shen Dongling suddenly remembered that she was actually jealous of Shen Miao. Shen Dongling was able to step on the rest of the people in the Shen residence, including the second and third household, Shen Yu and Shen Qing, but she could not be compared to Shen Miao. The family that Shen Miao relied on was precisely what Shen Dongling would never be able to obtain. Once a lowly person gained power, they would abandon their previous cautiousness and humbleness, which would instead make people feel even more twisted. This was why a scholar from a poor family would become incomparably arrogant when he became a minor official in the dynasty. Because of his status, he was afraid that others would see through him at any time. Shen Dongling was lost in thought when she heard Wang Bai say, "At this time, we need to make a good plan. I have to discuss this with the crown prince first." Shen Dongling came back to her senses and said with a smile, "It would be good to invite fifth younger sister out." She thought for a moment and said, "I can send an invitation to fifth younger sister." "Oh?" Wang Bai asked, "Will he come out?" It was as if she had long known that the relationship between Shen Dongling and Shen Miao was not close, but when it fell into Shen Dongling's ears, it seemed to be mocking the difference between her and Shen Miao. Suppressing the displeasure in her heart, Shen Dongling said, "My husband doesn't believe me? Don't worry, I will definitely call fifth younger sister out." In the residence of the Count of Pingnan, Su Mingfeng was currently having a headache. Yesterday Princess Rong Xian actually came to the residence of the Count of Pingnan. Princess Rong Xian had not gone out for a long time and lived in seclusion, so no one paid attention to her. Moreover, she was in disguise, so Su Mingfeng almost did not recognize her. For Princess Rong Xian to lower herself to come to the residence of the Count of Pingnan, there must be a very important matter. Princess Rong Xian let the servants directly inform Su Mingfeng, indicating that this matter had nothing to do with Su Yu and was specially here for him. Even though Su Mingfeng was puzzled, he did not dare to neglect and welcomed Princess Rong Xian in, thinking that Princess Rong Xian wanted to instruct him to do something. Who knew that Princess Rong Xian was not here to instruct people but to inquire about information? Chapter 766. And the news that she inquired about also made Su Mingfeng surprised. The news that Princess Rong Xian inquired about was about Xia Jingxing. Xia Jingxing died 2 years ago in the battlefield of the northern Jiang. Because everyone in the Ding capital knew that Xia Jingxing and Princess Rong Xian had a very good relationship, so after Xia Jingxing died, Princess Rong Xian fell into a serious illness. Since then, no one dared to mention Xia Jingxing in front of Princess Rong Xian, lest it made Princess Rong Xian remember the sad things. Who knew that now Princess Rong Xian took the initiative to ask about Su Mingfeng? Princess Rong Xian asked Su Mingfeng about Xia Jingxing's past matters and even beat around the bush to find out if Xia Jingxing had any secrets. Finally, she asked about Xia Jingxing's corpse. Xia Jingxing was initially killed by the enemy's tens of thousands of arrows at the northern Jiang, and his head was hung on the city walls by the enemy's leader before being skinned and dried. At that time the Xia family's army could not fake it under the watchful eyes of everyone. Afterwards, when they thought of ways to retrieve the corpse, it was already so tragic that it was shapeless and it was not a complete corpse. At that time when Xia Ding saw Xia Jingxing's corpse, he fainted, and Princess Rong Xian was afraid that she could not take it and did not dare to look. It was Su Mingfeng, his childhood playmate, who sent Xia Jingxing on his last journey. Now that Princess Rong Xian came to ask Su Mingfeng if he was sure that the corpse was Xia Jingxing. If it was normal times, Su Mingfeng would at most feel some doubts, but ever since he met Shen Miao on the streets and discovered the tiger head bracelet on Shen Miao's wrist, Su Mingfeng had some doubts in his heart and kept staring at Shen Miao's movements in the Shen residence. Princess Rong Xian would suddenly look for him to inquire about Xie Jingxing's matter. Su Mingfeng almost immediately confirmed his own guess. Xie Jingxing did not die and most likely was still alive in this world. Even though he did not understand why Xie Jingxing did not appear if he was still alive, Su Mingfeng was not stupid. After he dealt with Princess Rong Xian with a few words, Princess Rong Xian left and Su Mingfeng fell into his own thoughts. Since Princess Rong Xian had doubts, she must have found some clues, which meant that Xie Jingxing must have revealed something. Thinking of Shen Miao's bracelet and Princess Rong Xian's strange behavior, Su Mingfeng had a bold guess. Not only did Xie Jingxing not die, he was also in the Ding capital. But what made Su Mingfeng puzzled was that there were no secrets between Xie Jingxing and Princess Rong Xian, and their relationship was the best. What was it that made Xie Jingxing unwilling to tell the truth in front of Princess Rong Xian? Moreover, why did Princess Rong Xian ask about Xie Jingxing's childhood? What was the connection? No matter what the reason was, Su Mingfeng felt that Xie Jingxing had his own reasons. The most important thing was to find Xie Jingxing's whereabouts. After finding Xie Jingxing, all the questions would naturally be answered. Where could she go to find Xie Jingxing? One could say that the Ding capital was not big, but it was definitely not small. To find a person who was hiding in the vast sea of people, especially when that person was quite capable, it was definitely not an easy matter. Su Mingfeng intended to send people to keep an eye on Princess Rong Xian. Since Princess Rong Xian had already found some clues, the things she grasped must be more than him. Whatever Princess Rong Xian investigated, he only needed to follow behind and take advantage of it. Su Mingfeng raised his hand to summon the servants. She whispered a few words into his ear. When Shen Miao received Shen Dongling's invitation, Xie Jingxing was drinking tea in her room. Ever since that night, Xie Jingxing had a justifiable reason to manage her matters. At first Shen Miao was not used to it, but later she got used to it. Anyway, Xie Jingxing's hands and eyes were everywhere, and even if she did not tell him, he would think of ways to find it himself. At the end it would still be the same ending. Xie Jingxing glanced at the invitation in her hands and said, "Shen Dongling?" Chapter 767. Most likely he is planning something. Shen Miao said, inviting me to taste the incense. She was startled for a moment before smiling. Since the incense is out, it seems that the foundation of the Minister of Land's residence is not bad. Tasting tea and wine were generally very standard, but tasting the incense was different. A good piece of incense was worth 1,000 gold, and it would be gone once it was burned. Shen Miao knew that the most expensive incense was the jade pear agarwood. A piece of the size of a fingernail would cost 10,000 taels of gold. There was once a merchant from the western region that came to the palace as a tribute and wanted the title of an imperial merchant. That jade pear agarwood was the size of a child's fist and was very rare. At that time all the concubines in the inner palace came to take a look, and Shen Miao also felt that it was a novelty. Shen Miao had always thought that the jade pear agarwood would be placed in the imperial treasury, as it was a very precious thing. Afterwards, on Mei Furan's birthday, Fu Xiu lit the jade pear agarwood and won the beauty's smile. Tasting the incense was burning real gold and silver, and it was equivalent to losing a lot of banknotes. Shen Dongling's invitation said phoenix mouth agarwood, and it was also very precious. The salary of the Minister of Land's family would definitely not be able to withstand this kind of torment. It was obvious that the family that Shen Dongling married into was a well-off family. After all, many of the officials in the Ding capital would not be squandering like this. One did not know if Shen Yu in the 9 Springs would be so angry that she would come back to life after knowing the truth. Phoenix mouth agarwood is not cheap, and to spend so much money, it is definitely not just for sisters to reminisce about old times. Scheming against you? Xia Jingxing raised his eyebrows and asked. Shen Li is not Shen Yu. If she really wanted to scheme against me, I would not be easily schemed by her. Shen Dongling is not stupid, and I guess that she wanted me to go to plan something. If I were to go over, it would only make her matters smoother. If I do not go, there would not be much loss. Shen Miao smiled. I just feel that the Minister of Land's family actually have so much money. She looked at Xia Jingxing. When Shen Miao saw Shen Dongling at the execution ground, she noticed that Shen Dongling's clothes and jewelry were extremely expensive. No matter how much Wang Bai doted on her, it was not rational to exceed what the Wang family could afford. Then where did the Wang clan get so much silver? Xia Jingxing caught a glimpse of Shen Miao's eyes and tactfully continued. The Wang family is the Crown Prince's people, and the Crown Prince has some relations with the salt smugglers. Wang Bai is the middleman. Shen Miao was suddenly enlightened. No wonder, selling illicit salt was a highly profitable business, and even if it was just a small change, it was enough to make one envious. No wonder the Wang family could burn incense. As such, Shen Miao somewhat understood where Shen Dongling's confidence came from. If Shen Dongling had married an ordinary official, she would have been very careful. But now that the Wang family was overflowing with wealth and Wang Bai was working under the Crown Prince, Shen Dongling thought that with Emperor Wen Hui supporting the Crown Prince, the great cause of the world would eventually be in the Crown Prince's hands. With the rising tide, the boat would rise, and Wang Bai, as the person who worked for the Crown Prince, naturally would have his value increase. She was Wang Bai's official wife and had boundless glory. It was probably because he was blinded by the glory that he became bolder. Shen Dongling couldn't always keep a clear head, so she couldn't see the facts clearly. There were so many variables in the world, so who could guarantee that the Crown Prince would inherit the throne? Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the Crown Prince inherited the throne, who could guarantee that Wang Bai would be able to sit back and relax under the Crown Prince and rise up step by step? There were many cases of the cunning hare being cooked after it was done, and the most ruthless was the imperial family. Wang Bai is the Crown Prince's people. Shen Miao pondered. Shen Dongling's sudden action must be related to Wang Bai, which means it is related to the Crown Prince. Shen Miao looked at Xia Jingxing. My relationship with the Crown Prince. She wants to make an issue out of my marriage? Chapter 768. Xia Jingxing looked at her with appreciation. Smart. You already knew about it? Shen Miao was somewhat suspicious. It was Shen Dongling's idea. Xia Jingxing casually picked up a piece of pastry and took a bite before saying, to let Huang Fu Hao and the Crown Prince come to an agreement and act out a play together. Using your marriage to Huang Fu Hao as a request to form an alliance with Ming Qi. Otherwise the alliance would break apart and they might attack Ming Qi. At that time the news would be released and the commoners would panic and ask Shen Xian to marry you to Huang Fu Hao. On one side is the commoners and on the other side is you. Shen Xian would definitely be in extreme pain. But no one in the world would dare to go against Huang Fu Hao. At this time only the Crown Prince would come forward and say that you and the Crown Prince already have an engagement. Compared to marrying you to the distant Qin country, it would be easier for Shen Xian to accept you marrying the Crown Prince to stay in Ming Qi and would be grateful to the Crown Prince. Xia Jingxing shrugged his shoulders. This Shu younger sister of yours is also not a simple character. Shen Miao's face turned livid when she heard this and sneered. She really racked her brains for me. She actually used the commoners of the world to threaten Shen Xian. The inheritance that she received from old General Shen was to fight for the commoners. And when Shen Xian was being threatened by the commoners that he deeply loved, the other side was Shen Miao, his biological daughter. One could imagine how painful Shen Xian's heart was. Among everyone in the Shen residence, Shen Miao and Shen Dongling had always minded their own business. Now that the one who provoked first was cheap, Shen Miao had an uncontrollable disgust towards Shen Dongling. She said, "The marriage with the crown prince is not possible." Xia Jingxing stared at her with a smile that was not a smile. "Why? Want to marry me that much?" Not waiting for Shen Miao to get angry, he continued, "Do not worry. No one in the world would dare to snatch things from my hands. One fear that he would not be able to afford the woman that I fancy." His words were always so unscrupulous that Shen Miao's face inexplicably turned slightly red. She diverted the topic. "Shen Dongling schemed against me, naturally I have to return 1 or 2 points. Furan's meaning is my meaning." Xia Jingxing said lazily. "Shen Miao," she said, "what exactly do you mean now? To destroy Ming Qi and unify the Great Liang?" "I said before, on this point, I am the same as you." Shen Miao replied. "I've said it before. On this point, I'm the same as you." Shen Miao replied. The joking expression on Xia Jingxing's face gradually disappeared. He did not know what Shen Miao was thinking in her heart, as he could not see any clue at all. On the matter of the two countries being enemies, Xia Jingxing had never thought that Shen Miao would support him. Now Shen Miao's state of disregard had already made Xia Jingxing very surprised. And now Shen Miao's expression reminded him that what she said was serious. She wanted to destroy Ming Qi. Why? Shen Miao was not a person who was greedy for fame and fortune, so it was not to echo what he said. And because she loved Xia Jingxing, she could even throw Ming Qi to the back of her mind. Xia Jingxing felt that it was not like it. It seemed that from the moment she knew Shen Miao had been extremely hostile towards the Fu family. Of course, this was because the Fu family also wanted to suppress the Shen family, but Shen Miao was an unmarried girl. How would she know about these things? Sometimes when she looked, she could see more clearly than Shen Xian and Shen Qiu. She had always stood in front of the Shen family with a protective attitude, as if she had long expected what would happen. The closer one was to Shen Miao, the more one discovered that there were many mysteries about Shen Miao. But these actions, even the Feng Xian pawn shop could not find out the reason. It really made one suspicious. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "You do not like Ming Qi?" Shen Miao's eyes drooped down. The general trend of the world, divided for a long time, united for a long time, divided for a long time. This has been the logic since ancient times. It is not something that can be changed if I am willing or not, like or not. Even if I am not willing or not like, these things will still happen. This is destined. She raised her head and looked at the slightly swaying candle on the table. Moreover, compared to the Fu family, I would rather this country be in your hands. Chapter 769. Xia Jingxing was surprised for a moment. When two countries are at war, it has nothing to do with the common people. These few years, Ming Qi's luck is already at its end. The taxes are heavy and there are continuous natural disasters, making the common people's lives difficult. The officialdom is dark and the officials are corrupt. The emperor is even more muddle-headed. Towards the aristocratic families that had made great contributions, he was wary of schemes and could not wait to kill them. In comparison, the common people of Great Liang are living and working in peace and all industries are flourishing. Shen Miao said, "I know that Emperor Yonglu is a wise ruler. At the beginning when he attacked other small countries, there were people of other small countries that opened the city gates to welcome him. Isn't it because of this reason?" Xia Jingxing looked deeply at Shen Miao and there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. Everyone said that females were the most short-sighted, only able to see the front and not the bigger picture. Little did they know that it was just that they had not encountered it before. Xia Jingxing had seen the most broad-sighted and knowledgeable female was his imperial sister-in-law, Emperor Yongli's wife, Empress Xianda. But Empress Xianda was from a historian's family and had a strong memory and was also the ruler of the 6 palaces. Shen Miao was only 16 years old and the furthest place she had been to was the Shaochun city. 2 years ago, she was even called a love-struck idiot. But Shen Miao's words about the current situation could not be compared to most of Emperor Yongli's aides. She did not see herself as a person of a certain country, but stood at the height of history and calmly followed the law, just like following the changes of the 4 seasons. There were not many people in the world who could see so clearly, but this person was sitting in front of him. Xia Jingxing suddenly felt somewhat fortunate. He was the one who discovered this female and Shen Miao was willing to say these words to him. Shen Miao did not know what Xia Jingxing was thinking in his heart. She only heard Fu Xiuyi's evaluation of Emperor Yonglu, saying that Emperor Yonglu was an outstanding person throughout the ages and a wise ruler of a generation. The initial territory of Great Liang was not as vast as today, especially after the death of the late Emperor of Great Liang. There was a period of turmoil in the country and other countries took the opportunity to invade. Afterwards, when the current Emperor Yonglu ascended the throne, he slowly began to recover the territory, and not only that, he also started to annex the surrounding small countries. Emperor Yonglu was a very charismatic person and followed the hearts of the people. Some of the small countries' people even hoped that Emperor Yonglu would annex them to improve their difficult lives. And Emperor Yonglu did it. At that time Shen Miao was very surprised by this matter and Fu Xiuyi was also very fearful of Emperor Yonglu. Afterwards, when Fu Ming was studying, he also read about this and discussed it with Shen Miao in high spirits, thus Shen Miao had a deep memory of this matter. Xia Jingxing paused for a moment and said unhappily, "Why do you remember his matters so clearly?" "Shen Miao," she said, "of course, I'm not that great. I'm just trying to protect myself. If the Fu family was in charge, the Shen family would be destroyed sooner or later. If the monarch was heartless, the officials naturally had no need to uphold morality and justice. Isn't that right? Then how do you know that Emperor Yonglu would not be the second emperor Wen Hui and would not take action against the Shen family?" Xia Jingxing asked. One heard that Emperor Yonglu has a general surnamed Li by his side, and his experience was similar to the Shen family, but the Li family was treated with courtesy by Emperor Yonglu. The Shen family's military strength is not as good as that General Li, so there is no need to worry. Shen Miao thought in her heart that at least in her previous lifetime before she died, this General Li's family lived very well. Xia Jingxing was startled. "How do you know that there is a General Li?" Shen Miao's heart moved. She had forgotten that she was now the daughter of the Shen family, so naturally it was not possible for her to know the great Liang's General Li. But she still had to cover up a few words. "This General Li is very famous, so it is not strange that Ming Qi knows of him." "Very famous?" Xia Jingxing frowned. "More famous than me?" Shen Miao was determined not to say these words to him and said, "Let's not talk about these. Since one must deal with Ming Qi at the end, naturally one cannot let the Qin country and Ming Qi form an alliance. If it is so, it would be somewhat troublesome for the great Liang to deal with. You staying in my Ding capital and not leaving, is it not to break up their alliance?" Xia Jingxing smiled gently, "Following one's husband when one marries. You are very thoughtful for me." Shen Miao ignored the parts of his words that should not be heard and said, "There is a good way to break up their alliance. Just see if you can do it or not." Xia Jingxing's lips hooked up. "Tell me about it." "Killing, stealing, framing and slandering." She smiled gently and dignified. "It is best that there is no evidence when dead." Chapter 770. The days seemed to be exceptionally calm, but no one knew if there were any plans hidden under the calmness. Everyone in the residence of Prince Ding was in danger these few days, especially the few advisors that Fu Xiuyi valued, and they were very careful when they did things. It was because a few days ago Pei Lang, whom Fu Xiuyi valued the most, was arrested and locked up in the private prison. Everyone was not clear about the specific reason, but there were some servants who were in the know that it was because Pei Lang was a spy sent by Fu Xiuyi's opponent. Before this, no one could deny Pei Lang's talent. Even though the guests were jealous that Fu Xiuyi valued him highly, but Pei Lang had indeed solved a lot of problems for Fu Xiuyi in these 2 years. Fu Xiuyi said that he would capture him. Not to mention whether this matter was true or not, but the night before he was captured, Pei Lang and Fu Xiuyi were playing chess and drinking tea together, looking like a ruler and official in harmony. If Fu Xiuyi suddenly knew of the clues, he would definitely investigate if it was true or not, otherwise he would wrongly accuse a good person and damage a confidant for no reason. But Fu Xiuyi was so decisive that it could only mean that he had long suspected Pei Lang. To be able to be this intimate even after having doubts, this Prince Ding was not a simple person. No matter if it was to punish the chicken to warn the monkey, the advisors were much more respectful when they faced Fu Xiuyi. However, Fu Xiuyi's days were not as comfortable as other people thought, and he also had some doubts about some things. He sent people to keep an eye on Princess Rong Xian's residence and at the end learned that Princess Rong Xian actually disguised herself and went to Ping Nan Count residence to look for Su Mingfeng. Even though he did not know what they talked about and did not know why Princess Rong Xian was there, Fu Xiuyi thought that there was definitely something fishy about it. Princess Rong Xian lived in seclusion and did not even have a close relationship with Emperor Wenhui. If there was anything, it would be the early years when Princess Yuqing and Princess Rong Xian were close. But Princess Yuqing had died for many years and Princess Yuqing's son, Xie Jingxing, was close to Princess Rong Xian, but Xie Jingxing had already died in the northern Jiang battlefield 2 years ago. There was no friendship between Ping Nan Count residence and Princess Rong Xian. Fu Xiuyi racked his brains to think of the connection between Princess Rong Xian and the southern Count residence, but no matter how he searched, he could not find any valuable clues. What made Fu Xiuyi puzzled was why Princess Rong Xian did not look for the Count of Ping Nan, Suyu, but only Su Mingfeng. Su Mingfeng had long left his official career, and for official matters, Su Mingfeng could not help at all. If it was for private matters, did Su Mingfeng privately know Princess Rong Xian? Su Mingfeng, Su Mingfeng. Fu Xiuyi was chewing on this name when he was suddenly surprised. Su Mingfeng's name was well known by many people in the Ding capital. It was not only because he was outstanding and talented, nor was it because it was a pity that he had to retire from the official path due to a serious illness when his career was just right, but it was because he was Xie Jingxing's childhood friend. There was once someone who did not understand why Su Mingfeng would mix around with Xie Jingxing, that playful and mischievous brat, all day long when Su Mingfeng looked at this upright and awe-inspiring youth. But the residents of the Marquis of Linan and the residents of the Count of Ping Nan were old friends, so it was understandable to say that their relationship was good. As if he had found some clues, Fu Xiuyi's thoughts were suddenly connected. Su Mingfeng was Xie Jingxing's childhood friend, and Princess Ming'an was Xie Jingxing's emu. If Princess Ming'an privately went to look for Su Mingfeng, they would most likely talk about Xie Jingxing. But was Xie Jingxing not dead? Why would Princess Ming'an suddenly go and ask about a dead person? If it was in the past, everyone would not dare to mention a single word about Xie Jingxing in front of Princess Ming'an, as they were afraid of poking into Princess Ming'an's sore spot. Princess Ming'an took the initiative to ask. Could it be that Xie Jingxing was not dead? Fu Xiuyi jumped in shock at his own sudden guess, but quickly denied it. He had personally seen the secret report on Xie Jingxing's death, so there would not be any mistake. Not to mention that under the watchful eyes of the public, it was impossible to replace the beam with the pillar. Chapter 771. But it was obvious that it was to follow Princess Ming'an to investigate Prince Roy's matter, so why would it suddenly go to Su Mingfeng's head and even involve the dead Xie Jingxing? If that was the case, things would become complicated, but it was also more interesting. Fu Xiuyi stood up and thought for a moment before instructing the person beside him, go to the dungeon. There was a dungeon in the residence of Prince Ding, and it was built in the ancestral hall in the courtyard. The imperial family's ancestral hall was not here, and the reason why it was built in the residence was to pray to Buddha. There was a benevolent-looking Guanyin statue on the wall, and when one opened that painting, one would see a small smiling Buddha. After twisting the wooden fish at the feet of the smiling Buddha, the stone door would suddenly open and one would enter the dungeon of Prince Ding's residence after walking along the stone door. The people locked up in this dungeon were either spies or people under Prince Ding who had committed a big mistake. Normal death was not enough to punish them, and there were all kinds of torture that one would be filled with the smell of blood upon entering. Thin, leather-like things were hung on the stone walls. Upon closer inspection, they were actually people who had died. They had been skinned and hung here to dry. They still had the look of extreme agony on their faces before they died. Just a glance at them was enough to make one shudder. Outside was the ancestral hall for praying, but inside was such a demonic business. Under Guanyin's eyelids, this place was like the 18th level of hell and was even more terrifying than the 18th level of hell. Fu Xiu-yi leisurely walked in and looked at the human skins on both sides with eyes full of appreciation. The subordinate beside him led the way and only stopped when they reached the last cell. The person locked up in the cell was hung upside down on the beam and his entire body was drenched in blood. His robes were dyed bright red and one could hardly see the original color. Because he was hung upside down, there would be drops of blood dripping onto the ground from time to time, forming a small blood stain. Fu Xiu-yi quietly looked at that person and that person seemed to have fainted. He gave a look to the person beside him and immediately someone brought a bucket of chilly water and poured it on the person in the cell. That person quivered and his entire body could not help but tremble, as if he was in so much pain that he could not speak and was suffering great pain. Fu Xiu-yi smiled and went forward. Is teacher used to it? The chilly water stung the wound, but it also washed away the bloodstains on the prisoner's face, revealing a proud face. It was Pei Lang. Pei Lang smiled and replied with a trembling voice, "Thanks to your highness, I'm doing well. I've long known that Mr. isn't an ordinary person, but I didn't expect that not only are you talented, but your integrity is also worthy of my respect. Otherwise, why would the Shen family send you here?" Fu Xiu-yi sighed. It was said that the soldiers that Shen Xian leads are all valiant and teacher is a scholar, but one's bones are so hard. This in would also like to know how General Shen trains people. Pei Lang gasped for breath and said with a smile, "This subordinate has no relationship with General Shen. It's already been a few days, but you're still so persistent." Fu Xiu-yi said, "Even though the moral integrity is commendable, at the end it gives one a headache and one has no choice but to specially prepare some unusual games for gentlemen." Pei Lang only smiled and said nothing. Fu Xiu-yi looked at him and spoke in a very gentle tone, as if there was some nostalgia. "Actually, this prince and you, master and servant, can be considered to have a good friendship. Your talent is like the rain, and this inn also appreciates it. This prince is soft-hearted and is willing to give you a chance. After atoning for your crimes, it will be as if nothing happened in the past. This prince will still be the same as you in the past. This prince will address you as teacher and you are this prince's most capable think tank." He got closer to Pei Lang and almost coaxed, "As long as you tell this prince what secret the Shen family has and what is the purpose of you being sent to this inn. How about 2 sentences in exchange for a chance?" You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.